I'm ready, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much. All right. Okay, now that council members are present, we have one absent. Our Mayor Pro Tem Orozco will be absent. I call to order the November 15th meeting of the City of West Sacramento City Council, West Sacramento Redevelopment Agency, and Finance Authority. We will begin with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we live, work, learn, and commune is the original homelands of the indigenous people of West Sacramento, who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We acknowledge and we thank the original inhabitants who have occupied, maintained, and secured this place, who still exist on this land. We respect and celebrate the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to this land on which we gather. And the council met in closed session this evening and on the items on the agenda. Mr. City Attorney, can you please provide a report?
Certainly. Council met in closed session. The items on the closed session agenda includes a duplicate. Item 1 is actually a duplicate of the other items on the agenda. So they met under items 2, 3, and 4 on the closed session agenda to talk about price and terms of sale on a number of pieces of property. No reportable action was taken.
Thank you so much. We would like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which will be led by Alicia Macias Gutierrez. If you can come to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As is noted on our agenda, City Council is prohibited by state law from discussing and taking any action on items that are brought under item 1 for public comment, but it provides an opportunity for a public forum. The public is given an opportunity at this time to address City Council on issues not listed on the agenda. So we do ask that anyone wishing to address council on this or any other item this evening to please fill out a request to speak card and return it to the clerk. And we accept the request to speak cards up to the conclusion of the reading of the staff report on any particular agenda item. Once the staff report has been read, we open up the item for public comment. The clerk will announce your name for you to walk to the podium now in front of the clerk, and you can adjust the podium up and down with a little push button. And now in front of the clerk, you will see a timer to ensure that everyone has a chance to be heard. We ask that all comments be limited to 3 minutes tonight. Also in front of the clerk is an analog flip chart, which indicates which agenda item the council is currently considering. We also recognize that for some, speaking in public can cause anxiety, so we request that there be no applause or boos, catcalls, or other demonstrations. Furthermore, we also ask that we maintain a civil discourse here in chambers. We ask that those in attendance and those who address the City Council abide by the code of conduct posted on the not speak in loud, threatening, offensive, abusive, or other disrespectful language that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. Now this brings us to item 1, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the council. Each person has 3 minutes to speak. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
Our first speaker is Guy Stevenson.
Ladies, Mayor, I have a serious problem with the city over here on one of these issues. There was an article done about, I don't know, a month and a half ago, and it came out, and it was a 5-month investigation on VIA and how it operates and their safety and all that other stuff. And then it brought up the different things that need to be fixed. But then your people over here in this building decided they wanted to call the local newspaper, talk to the editor, and have somebody rewrite it and say that it's a wonderful service, no violations and all that. And that's, you know, to me, that's called slimy government. If you people can't fix something, then why have it? But don't stand there and tell the community or the people in the community that they're liars. Because there was several people that were a part of that article, not just me, but several. And then basically when you write a report about VIA saying, oh yeah, there's no problems. You know, it's a wonderful service with apps and they're on time and all this other stuff. That's just total bull malarkey is what it is. So what happens is you get these people over here and apparently they're doing what they call casualty reports or whatever. They want to fix it. So how do they fix it? They call the editor of this small little paper and say, I didn't like what you wrote. So will you have somebody different write a different type of narrative about it? The city's narrative and not the community? That pisses me off. So I turned around and I filed another report with the state to the Cal PUC. And they're going to check into it along with the California Labor Board because they're going under the radar, and some of the things that the people over at the Labor Board are unaware that they get paid by the hour, but they're considered an Uber Lyft type program. They're not. And that's from the investigators over there on Howe Avenue. So the more you push, the more I'm going to push. And I just don't understand why you can't fix the problem instead of sugarcoating the problem, because that's what you're doing. And so I have a bad taste in my mouth about VIA to begin with, as you know. And then when they put out an article that says, oh, it's just a wonderful service, they're great people, they don't have any problems, that's a total bull. You know what I mean? They have a bad safety record. Why don't you go to Woodland and ask CHP? There'll be more than provide.
Alicia Gutierrez.
Good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. I'm here tonight to champion two local efforts that align really well with what I believe to be West Sacramento's shared goals, to support prosperity for all community members and neighborhoods in an equitable way. The one that I will comment on now is on the Bright and Broderick Community Center, which I understand to be caught up in a permitting nightmare. I have some anecdotal information about permitting in West Sacramento. There we go. But I also have some real information about the process that this project has gone through and the multiple rounds of comments and just delays and lack of coordination between the departments. I'm hoping that after the comments heard tonight, that there is a concerted effort to find solutions. This community center is going to bring good things for the north side. A lot of people have commented before on the lack of access. We've found solutions like free VIA rides to community center and things in the south area. This is something, it's a historical building. My family has had multiple celebrations there many, many years ago, decades ago, and I understand it has a historical building designation. So I'm really just hoping that the city can work together with the Buena Vista Rancheria of Miwok Indians, maybe with an ombudsman service, or finding solutions that will help to streamline the permitting process to bring this community center online, so that they can offer the services that they've committed to offering, like free tutoring for students that live on the north side and would have a really difficult time to make it to the south. the delays have made the permitting process really impossible, I think, and very resource intensive and costly for the rancheria, which, in my opinion, did a public service by purchasing the building. And I equate it to, or I look at the juxtaposition with the city's purchase of the Pheasant Club, which is also a historical building, also intended to offer community services for people of West Sacramento. And yeah, it strikes me that the city purchased that building with public input. There's, people on both sides.
Thank you, Alicia.
Okay, sorry. I could keep going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Manuel Castro.
Same topic here. Good evening. My name is Manuel Castro. I run a nonprofit called Spark, Skills Preparation and Advancement for Readiness for Kids. It's to support Washington Unified School District students. For the last 4 years, I've been teaching online math classes for 2 grades every year, and we want to expand services to help other kids from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And to do that, we wanted to find a location to hold these in-person services, because tutoring in person is way better than online. That's my personal opinion. Anyways, so we talked to Rhonda, and Rhonda offered to have her community center host our free drop-in tutoring and Brighton project. I targeted that area because I grew up in an area like that, and I want to share with you my experience in having a community center near my home. So many, many years ago, my mom moved myself and my 3 older siblings at the time into the project in Bella Vista Housing in Rodeo, California. My mom worked 2 full-time jobs, trying to raise kids, cook and clean and do all that stuff. And so basically we run amok. The kids were running around crazy. But what we did, we found solace in going to this, what we considered a community center, the Boys and Girls Club. That community center was within walking distance of our apartment complex. It was a safe environment for kids to go to. Our parents didn't drop us off like today. We just walked wherever we needed to go. So 5 years old, I'm walking around the neighborhood, going to the community center. And it also had tons of activities for kids to entertain us. So every time I arrived at the community center, Miss Garcia, she was the one who kind of ran the whole infrastructure there. She'd greet us and she'd immediately get us moving on a task. Hey, join a basketball game. Hey, play pool. You want to play ping pong? You want to play a board game? How about paint some ceramics? How about do your homework? She never let us sit idle there. We always had to do something. And she knew all of us. Not only was she a resident of the city, but she got to know us kids, and she got to see the value of what a community center could do for kids like us. See, Ms. Garcia, she was a role model. Like many of the role models in my lives, they helped keep me in line. They helped me see the positive outlook on life despite the obstacles that we had in our community. See, she was the one who helped guide me in the right direction so that I am where I am today versus where my older brother is, which is he spent half of his life in prison, homeless, and on drugs. So with these kind of community centers, with these kind of role models, with a community center like this, there's such a benefit to our community. And I hope that you'll be proactive in trying to help move this project along so that we can open that community center to benefit our communities, and also so Spark can go there and tutor some kids with math. Thank you.
35 seconds. Thank you, Manuel.
Angelina Hinojosa.
Sintamana Wanawanan Kanima. Hello, friends and relatives. My name is Angelina Hinojosa. I'm 18 years old, and I'm also a tribal community member. I'm also here in support of asking to approve the permits and make the process as easy as possible to move forward with the Brighton Project Community Center. I think that's important for all to want the opportunity to build ties with your own community. And that means all, including our Native people. And the youth who are tended to be pushed out from the side are usually Native youth within our own communities even. From the youth perspective, sometimes all we need is a place, a safe place, somewhere to be, and a place that understands culture, spirituality, diversity, and fun. Sometimes we just need something to do, a place to be, somewhere that accepts youth and families. Opening this center will create change in more people's families, but it'll also give our youth somewhere to be. A lot of the times our youth are out there getting in trouble, have nothing else better to do. Sometimes being busy keeps us occupied. And I had to learn that the hard way. Being 18 years old, I have had a past. Just 18, but as a Native youth, we're already disproportionately impacted. So this community center will help our youth, give us something to do after school, give us, whether we put tutoring sessions in there, whether we put a community powwow in there, whether people rent the spaces for basket making, or even diversity. It doesn't have to be just Native people. But you gotta realize that your pen is gonna make that change. So for opening the center, it will not only create ties with the council and the community, but it'll create change within our own community and for kids like me and also kids in the West Sac community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leticia Aguilar.
Sinthamana, Winawonan Kanima, Tache, Leticia Aguilar. My name is Leticia Aguilar. Hello, friends and relatives. I'm a member of Pinoleville Pomo Nation, born and raised in Sacramento, California. I'm here in support of the opening of the community center, as it will be a step in the right direction to building relationships with our tribal community in Yolo County. We have many Native families that would benefit, that have been here for generations, many having uncles, aunties, and for generations, long before my time, before I was even here. Our family has been even utilizing the space prior, when it was the VFW hall, for our family gatherings, and a space where we can come into and celebrate each other in a healthy way. My uncles were also veterans, and so that was one thing that they have served their community in that way that we are really proud of. My uncles are full-blooded Pomo veterans. Also, the late Tom Villegas, who has worked hard to help build relationships in the Yolo County and for his tribal community for generations. This has been something that we've held high in regard, is having these safe spaces to be able to thrive as a people. And so we strongly support the project and ask the matter is passed and approved in any way possible, so we can finally move forward as a community in support of the Buena Vista Rancheria and all of the hard work that Rhonda has done to create change and build relationship, even overcoming barriers and obstacles that have been in place for our people for many generations. I feel like this will be a major accomplishment, especially for tribal communities and our allies as well, and the families that are here in Yolo County that are being served through the tribal TANFs, through the school systems, and also our people that are doing the hard work to create and build in a good way. And then also that it's being Native American Heritage Month, it will also be another thing that we can actually celebrate and show that is really pivotal in moving forward in the right direction and overcoming this process that seems to have become stagnant. And so we have so many community members here, council, and we just want to let you all know that our students are in those classrooms, and they do need support coming out of the pandemic, even having a physical space for them to get off of Zoom and get some of that support. Oh,
Thank you.
Rhonda Pope Flores.
Sort me up. So I was gonna bring my phone up here, but I pretty much have everything memorized in my head because I've been focused on this for so long. I just want to thank everyone that has come to speak in support of this community center. I grew up here. I've watched the North Side not have the resources that we need, which is why I was able to convince my tribal council to invest and buy this building. This has Native roots. First Native American Veterans Hall. All those pictures will be displayed in those walls. We have people lined up to provide these services. Okay, I'll talk about, that's the fun stuff. Now I'm gonna talk about the bad stuff. Okay, we submitted our permit back in December 7th of 2022. We were working with you. We engaged with Hilbers for the engineering. We hired an architect. Ultimately, we had to hire an attorney when we realized that we weren't gonna get very far. Our permits got locked out, okay? We were issued permits because I had to go back and look at my notes, and I know that we were issued permits because we paid them, and you won't release that until they're approved. So I didn't realize that before. Then we get a stop work order. I'm not going to go through the whole timeline. It's not 3 minutes long enough. April, we get a stop work order. Then we're advised to start all over and do one permit. So we do that. And then, this whole week I've been spending just trying to get this thing done. I have not done anything else, and I am a tribal leader, and I have a lot of things to do, and I have not focused on anything but this community center because I have people calling me all the time, and I just don't understand it. This system of how you have the permitting is flawed. It is flawed. No one communicates with the other. You have third-party inspectors that no one knows what's going on, and the worst part of it is this was a historical building, and by law, the city does have to have an inventory to protect historical resources, and I had to provide that. My tribal historic preservation officer, I went back through my notes because I wanted to double check that I wasn't speaking out of turn, and yes, I have all the emails where he communicated with SHPO and had to provide that back to you just to get our permit. And as of today, I've heard that we have the permit, but the other two permits that you guys locked us out of in December, now we're told you didn't respond to those permits and you're going to have to take care of that. That's unbelievable. Like, that is just crazy that you would lock us out of permits, not speak to any of my staff, make us start all over in June, and then in September, we were supposed to have all the comments back from all the departments, and it is November. That was August 29th that we submitted that. We are in November. That's a long 10-day process. It's flawed. You're going to lose people investing in this community.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Maria Garcia. Okay, if you have a translator available, you get 6 minutes.
Lo quiero hacer. First in
Yes.
Spanish. Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es María García, representante del Comité de Padres y miembro activo de Broderick y Bright Neighborhood Association. La razón de este correo electrónico es para hablarles. Les había mandado yo este correo electrónico a cada uno de los miembros de la ciudad para hablarles acerca de sobre Buenavista Ranchería, que está ayudando a traer un centro comunitario al lado norte de West Sacramento. Y con el paso de los meses, desde abril 15 del 2023, que es la fecha cuando se abriría, y hasta el día de hoy, noviembre 13 del 2023, aún no han podido abrir nuestro centro comunitario por diferentes razones de la ciudad de West Sacramento. La pregunta es, ¿cuánto más tiempo es lo que necesitamos esperar para tener los permisos de la ciudad y poder abrir nuestro centro comunitario? ¿Es acaso una muestra del escarmiento por hablar y pedir nuestros derechos? Si no es así, entonces, ¿qué es lo que está pasando? Por favor, ya dejen de tomar como rehenes nuestros permisos para completar este proyecto. Este proyecto es para nuestra comunidad. Ahora necesitamos que este proyecto termine su proceso lo más pronto posible. Nuestra comunidad pueda usar nuestro centro comunitario, Broderick y Bright Neighborhood Association, anteriormente Bright Veterans Memorial. El comité de padres necesita también un lugar donde tener sus reuniones. Gracias.
Gracias, María.
Her name is Maria Garcia, Parent Committee Representative and active member of Broderick and Bright Neighborhood Association. The reason for this email is to tell you about Buena Vista Rancheria that is helping to bring a community center to the north side of West Sacramento. And as the months go by, from April 15th, 2023, it's actually April 5th, which was the date when it would have opened. Oh, you're talking about the grand opening. Okay. And until today, as of today, November 13th, they just issued the permit, sorry, I'm going to correct that, to open our community center for different reasons from the city of West Sacramento. The question is, how much longer do we need to wait to get permits from the city to open our community center? Is it perhaps a sign of punishment for speaking and asking for our rights? If not, then what is happening? Please stop holding our permits hostage to complete this project. This project is for our community. Now we need this project to finish its process as soon as possible and our community be able to use our community center, Bright and Broderick Community Center, formerly Bright Veterans Memorial. Oh, so for the fathers to have reunions, you're talking about all the events. Yes. So what she's saying is all the events that have taken place there. We used to have the celebration of lives. We used to have the baby showers. We used to have wedding receptions. We had reunions. So she wants all of those things to return. Gracias.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Alex Hirsch.
Good evening, Mayor Guerrero and members of the City Council. My name is Alex Hirsch, and I'm here tonight as a board member for the West Sacramento Friends of the Library. As you know, the Friends of the Library are a nonprofit organization here in West Sacramento, made up entirely of community volunteers who are dedicated to a singular mission, which is supporting our incredible public library, the Arthur F. Turner Community Library. And not only our library, but our librarians and our library staff. As I'm sure you're aware, that normally would not be a controversial statement, but as we've unfortunately seen across the state and across the nation, and even here in our backyard in the city of Davis, librarians have become under attack. Folks who don't share those common feelings and sentiments for free expression and thought and freedom to access literature of any topic. And so this year, I wanted to share with the Friends of the Library is having its annual meeting, a celebration of the library and our library staff on Saturday, December 9th at 12:30 p.m. at the Arthur F. Turner Community Library. We'll be reporting about all the wonderful things our library has done over the year, all of the wonderful free community programs that our library staff put on for people, regardless of background, regardless of income, regardless of language. Truly, the library is a community center for the people of West Sacramento. And so I wanted to directly invite every member of the City Council, if possible, to attend that annual meeting. I know that many of you have in the past, and your support for the library and for the Friends of the Library does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. So again, our meeting will be on December 9th, Saturday, at 12:30 p.m. Our guest speaker will be our county supervisor, Oscar Villegas, who will also be sharing about his love for the library and his support for the library during this particularly trying time. And so I ask that the council members, if possible, attend, or if you can, please help us spread the word as well and let all of our West Sacramento residents know about the great work the library does and about our upcoming event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, for your contribution with the library. Thank you.
We have no additional requests to speak on this item.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Closing the public comment. I'd like to direct our city manager to address the concerns raised with the community center permitting process.
Sure, just briefly, as it was reported, the primary permit for tenant improvements for the community center was issued, I believe, today. My understanding there's one permit related to the HVAC system that's still outstanding, but as far as it's been reported to me, that shouldn't be a major issue to getting occupancy approval. So we'll continue to work with the applicant on that. But on a related note, I kind of want to point out, more importantly, I had a meeting with Rhonda today, joined by the mayor, and the manager of the new community center joined us as well, just to kind of hear about what the plans are for that facility. I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for us to have it as an asset in the community and hopefully work with the group to, you know, both hold events there when we need to reach out to the community up there in Brighton Broderick, and more importantly, sounds like a lot of good programming is going to come out of it. So we'll look for opportunities to partner as well. So, but it should be close to occupancy. I can continue to report to the council. We'll keep doing it on a weekly basis until they actually get their occupancy or permit.
Thank you for the updates. That would be greatly appreciated. We do get a lot of information on the side, and greatly appreciate the community center being a part of our, and apologize for frustrations. Next, under item 2 in our presentations under the city manager's office, we have a presentation of the City Council proclamation recognizing November 2023 as Native American Heritage Month, and we have Omar Carrillo and his daughter Kate joining us today. And if you can just come up to the podium, and I'll have Council Member Norma Alcala read the proclamation.
Whereas Native American Heritage Month has been established at the national and state levels with proclamations and celebrations to recognize the diverse cultures, traditions, histories, significant contributions in present-day lives of Native Americans, and whereas the city of West Sacramento was established in 1987 within an area of California that represented the unceded territory of indigenous people known as the Patwin and Southern Winton. And whereas the earliest historic records of the Patwin begins with the Spanish mission explorations and registers, and ethnohistoric records show that the Patwin inhabited land from the hills of the eastern northern coast ranges to the Sacramento River, and from Princeton south to the San Pablo and Suisun Bays. And whereas, like most indigenous people throughout the United States, the Patwin were forced from their ancestral lands onto reservations and rancherias during the early 1900s, where they currently reside as citizens of 3 sovereign, federally recognized tribal governments, today known as the Yoshi-Dehi Wintu Nation, Quetzal-Dehi Band of Wintu Indians, and Kehil-Dehi Band of Wintu Nations. And whereas the city of West Sacramento has a meaningful government-to-government relationship with the Yoshi-Dehi Wintu Nation and works in partnership to address the needs of the community and improve the lives of people who live within their respective jurisdictions today. And whereas Native people have made and continue to make distinct and significant contributions in many fields, including academic scholarship, agriculture, astronomy, art, business, education, ecology, engineering, environmentalism, economics, forestry, government, language, leadership, literature, mathematics, medicine, military, music, politics, poetry, science, and traditional cultural practices. And whereas the city of West Sacramento discourages any and all forms of racial slurs, names, or imagery that depict indigenous people as mascots or logos in educational institutions, sports teams, or any other organization within the city. And whereas the city of West Sacramento will encourage its citizens to acknowledge and celebrate November as Native American Heritage Month every year to foster education, relationships, and cooperation with Native people, while also supporting social and economic opportunities for them within the city of West Sacramento and Yolo County. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the West Sacramento City Council that the month of November 2023 will be recognized as Native American Heritage Month, proclaimed this 15th day of November 2023.
Thank you. And our representative from Yoshi-Dehi is here. Omar, do you have a few words to share?
Yes, please. Thank you. Before starting, I wanted to acknowledge Chairwoman Rhonda Pope, citizens of Buena Vista Rancheria, Miwok, and other Native peoples that are here. Brothers and sisters, welcome. Hekamo Bosai, Chu Omar Carrillo, Director of Government Affairs, Yochadihi Wintu Nation. Greetings all. My name is Omar Carrillo, Director of Government Affairs, Yochadihi Wintu Nation. I have a written statement from the Yochadihi Wintu Nation I'd like to read, and I thank you very much for this time. Thank you. Yochadihi Wintu Nation appreciates the recognition of both Native American Heritage Month and the acknowledgement that we are standing on the traditional Patwin lands. Native American Heritage Month was established to celebrate the diverse cultures, traditions, and histories of Native American peoples across the country and to acknowledge their significant contributions to the present-day lives of all citizens. Like most indigenous people throughout the United States, the Patwin people were forced off their ancestral lands onto reservations and rancherias where they currently reside as citizens of 3 sovereign, federally recognized tribal governments. Today, Yochadihi is pleased to have strong relationships with West Sacramento, and we believe that celebrating Native American Heritage Month is an opportunity to enhance understanding of California tribes and the people, and Yochadihi Wintu Nation and the Putwin people. Again, thank you for proclaiming November as Native American Heritage Month in West Sacramento and for fostering education and cooperation with Native peoples, not just at this time, but throughout the year. Yochadihi Wintu Nation looks forward to continuing to build cooperation and encourage social and economic activities within West Sacramento and to promote health and well-being for all citizens for the future. Willie Bo. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if you can all go down so that we can take a photograph, and if the Buena Vista Rancheria tribe can join us in that photograph, that would be wonderful. And before we proceed, I also want to recognize our city manager with Native American background as well. I want to recognize your heritage and contribution to our community, because we know how much that matters to you as well. Thank you so much. I'm giving our opportunity to our council members. Any words at this time? Yes, please.
So I always love that we are able to acknowledge, celebrate, and recognize, and it is a time to stop and to make sure we are learning about other cultures. I am very, very hopeful that it goes beyond simply recognizing Native American Heritage Month, and that we strengthen our partnership with Yochadihi as well as other tribes in West Sacramento, and I hope we have opportunities to be able to do that. Lastly, I was at the unveiling this month of the Native American statue at the Capitol. It was a beautiful, heartwarming, moving experience, and so I am happy that that has finally happened, and also look forward to other opportunities for that, not only in our neighboring city, but here too.
So I have a 3-year-old, and holidays and events like this are sometimes hard to describe to such a young child. And one of the things I've really appreciated from Yochadihi is the partnership with the Yolo County Library and sharing books of Native American heritage from Native authors. And representation matters, and it's been a really great opportunity for me to share with him this month. And so thank you for your partnership. Thank you, the tribe, for investing in West Sacramento, and echo my colleagues' comments on partnerships to continue moving all of this forward.
Mayor, I'd also like to thank all our Native American partners for everything that they do for our community. Rhonda, thank you so much. You are reaching out in ways that no one else has before, and you're bringing a lot of recognition, also pride, for those of us that can say we're Native American. My grandmother Siksta was. So I think many of us probably share. Some of us may not look it, but we probably, Aaron, I didn't know that. So it's something proud, our heritage. It's also one of sadness, what happened to our people. Still happening, unfortunately, in many parts of the world. And the most important thing is, we're resilient. So thank you again for everything that you're doing, Rhonda.
And I also want to add my gratitude for both of your contribution here. I wish we had more Native American representation here. But Yochide, he's been longstanding as far as a partner in our city. And countywide, just seeing the contributions that you've done and your commitment to continuing to invest in our community is greatly appreciated. And for the Miwok Indians who have inhabited this area, noting in a report, environmental impact report, that their presence is here, and just want to say that that's important to our community to recognize your contributions and preserve your Native American ancestry as well as you continue to navigate your participation and growth in our community, giving back in ways that you're in your heart, that you've always been there, and now you have, you've fought really hard for what you've accomplished and want to continue to bring that back and enrich our community with the cultural values and support of our youth. And as Councilmember Alcala has pointed out, there's been some hardships over the years in our community, and you're working to undo that. So for both of you, I just want to say thank you so much for your contributions. Thank you. Greatly appreciated. Right, next we have our consent agenda item 3 through 9. And are there requests to remove any items? No, I do have a memo here for the Housing Trust Fund Program, which is related to items 6 and 7 on tonight's consent agenda, that I just want to bring to the public's attention. That I just want to add to the city manager. Is this going to be included in the agenda posted on the city's website? Because it doesn't say errata, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah, it was prepared as an information memo to the council, but there's no reason we can't add it to the agenda as an errata for background information. So we'll make sure that happens. I'll get it to the city clerk.
That'll be great. Thank you so much. All right, then I'll accept the motion if there's no request.
Early moves.
Second.
Councilmember Early moved, and Councilmember Alcala seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sulpicio Hull.
Aye.
Councilmember Early.
Aye.
Councilmember Alcala.
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye. Thank you so much. This item is approved, or these consent agenda is approved. We have no public hearing, but we have 2 regular agenda items tonight. So first is agenda item 10 under community development, is a public workshop regarding proposed amendments to Title 17 zoning of the municipal code to facilitate tiny homes on wheels as legal dwellings. And our principal planner, Mr. Tilley, please proceed with your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Tall Canadian. So I do have a short PowerPoint to help illustrate tonight's discussion for the council in this workshop format. So while we're waiting for the computer to wake up, we'll also start this. So we are here in a workshop format regarding some proposed amendments to our zoning code as it relates to tiny homes on wheels. We're in a workshop format tonight on a draft ordinance seeking direction from the council on how we should proceed if we were to proceed with tiny homes on wheels and being recognized as being legal dwellings here in our community. This is a very similar presentation that I gave to the Planning Commission a couple of months back. And tonight we're seeking your direction on how we should proceed, or if we should proceed on this path. And we will be talking primarily about wheels tonight. That is really where the crux of this particular topic is. It's really has little to nothing to do with the mere size of the homes. the term tiny gets, I think, most of the attention. But in reality, if somebody wanted to do a tiny home presently, they could. As a primary unit, accessory unit, two of them on one property as a primary and accessory, a lot of different combinations. So here we go. We have another one.
Making a lot of noise.
You just have Jennifer advance the slides.
Yeah. So City Clerk's graciously going to advance the slides for us the old-fashioned way.
Thank you.
So just by way of background on the whole tiny home phenomenon, which has been a thing for a number of years, there's numerous television programs all talking about tiny homes in a variety of ways. And tiny homes, as the name implies, generally are small. I don't know if there's an exact size limit before you're no longer a tiny home, but we're generally talking about things up to around 400 square feet, some cases a little more, most cases a little less. Built in a factory or conventionally like any other home, and they can meet all these normal development criteria, not the least of which is even being able to purchase a kit for one at a place such as Home Depot. So they are out there and well-known and can be applied in a very conventional way. And so here's a few examples of tiny homes that are out there, different styles, very modern to kind of farmhouse, gamble roof. They run the whole gamut and can be done quite well in many cases. However, tonight, where our primary focus is going to be on the version of tiny homes or variant of tiny homes that are on wheels. And what's most important, and perhaps is the crux of why we're here before you tonight, is that legally these are vehicles. So each one of the three images in here is actually an example of a vehicle that's registered with the DMV and is used accordingly. So these are not presently legal dwellings because they are in vehicles. So to draw this distinction out, since many of these may appear similar, they are vehicles, in a sense, are not subject to the state's building code, as an example. They come on a chassis and are towed, typically, from a destination to another. They are not self-propelled. They would be towed. They typically are built with RV-style water hookups, things of that nature, and it can be set up to be off the grid. Many of the shows you may see show folks off in the desert or in the mountains or wherever they're at with their tiny home on wheels, and that is one particular application of this phenomenon. So over the last few years, we have been addressing a situation here in our West Sacramento community where a tiny home on wheels has been brought onto an undeveloped property in our community. This particular variant of the tiny home is made from a metal shipping container, is rather small, and presently does not have any utility connections such as water and sewer or power, to my knowledge. So the staff sees there are three options for how we may entertain a tiny home on wheels. And I'm going to underscore wheels because that's really the crux of the matter tonight. Certainly have the option to maintain the status quo, and where folks would be able to do conventionally built tiny homes as they wish. However, those variants that are on wheels would still remain in a campground or a RV park or similar facility. That's sort of the status, maintaining status quo, sort of what generally been referring to that as. Another option, and this would be staff's recommended option, should the council decide they wish to entertain tiny homes on wheels in any shape or form, is to allow them as accessory dwelling units. I'll explain another slide why, at least from a staff point of view, that could be reasonable. And then certainly there's another option where the council may ultimately direct us to develop an ordinance to allow tiny homes on wheels as a primary unit on a property here in town, or an ADU, or both. So these sort of three options. Staff's recommendation at this point in time is to go the ADU route should the council wish to open up for tiny homes on wheels. So as it seems practical, there's already adopted standards for ADUs. We're seeing many more of them. They are certainly a housing source that the state is effectively trying to promulgate. There's new legislation every year. Under this route, they would likely be less costly to potential dwellers of tiny homes on wheels because ADUs have very limited impact fees on them by state law. It's a significant change. An ADU would go on an existing lot there would already be a primary residence, so one may not need to actually then go out and acquire a property and incur the costs associated with not only purchasing the property, but upkeep and insurance, property taxes, things of that nature. And also it's a very important part of ADUs, especially under current law, is that they are able to utilize existing water and sewer connections. So that means there's no fees associated with connection because they're able to utilize the connection that's already present. And so those are substantial savings as opposed to doing a new primary unit on a lot on a undeveloped property. So at this point in time, that will close my presentation. I'll be open up for discussion, and we are seeking your direction tonight on how and if we should entertain tiny homes on wheels as legal dwellings outside of recognized mobile home parks, campgrounds, etc.
All right, thank you so much, David. Bring it back to council for any questions or comments. I see members of the public, I think the owner of the home in question here that got us to where we're at. The questions I will be interested in is, there are three choices here, and one is an ADU where it was referenced that the hookups and, all the additional, the electrical, connections and everything is easier and cheaper or just a quick add-on versus a home that is a single home on a lot and will need that in order to, and I think the recommendation is we'll need that as part of the recommendation to be present. And if that's not present today, how does it function without? And that's my question. I don't know if you can answer that, but if it's also to the members of the public who may speak.
Yeah, I'm aware of some of those aspects. I believe with the members of the public will fill in how that is working for them in the real world. Absent those utility connections, people are likely bringing in water or using a neighbor's hose, something to that effect, for drinking water, shower, etc. So this is a key component of this that we would look for, be it ADUs or primaries, that the extent those services are available to connect to water and sewer, and then to the grid.
But did you want to ask?
Address water.
Oh, go ahead.
I appreciate you addressing the water, or at least from your perspective. I'd also be curious how the water is disposed of, but also just connecting to plumbing as well.
Yeah,
dysentery.
The types of units that are out there that are the tiny homes on wheels, they can be connected to city services, water and sewer. They would mostly have an above ground connection versus pipes that are all underground, because these are not set up in a traditional way on a foundation with pipes, coming in that you see and then they get buried. So, but it is possible to connect to city water and sewer.
It is,
Yeah, great.
okay. Member Alcala?
Yes, just a really quick question. When this went through the planning commission, was there a recommendation that they gave on these options?
Yeah, the planning commission did not give us like, said, we want option one versus option two, but they were very much in support of at least the notion of entertaining tiny homes on wheels.
What if you don't connect to sewer?
Well, if that's not an area where septic could be available, then that would be a problem. Then this is something that comes up even now with, more conventional homes where we still have some on smaller lots around the city that are still on septic.
Got it.
And inevitably, those become problematic. I can recall when that was an issue in the Arlington Oaks neighborhood many years ago. And believe it or not, that whole neighborhood was on septic until the early to mid 2000s. But yet those are, fairly regular single family lots, way too small, to have a septic tank, leach field, all of that.
Thank you.
On that question, thank you for bringing that up. So on pathway 2 and 3, it mentions conventional connections to wet and dry utilities. If connections to our sewer was not available, then a septic tank would be what conventional meant.
Under the assumption that sewer is not available within some reasonable proximity to the site.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for clarifying that. And the other question I have is been the history around this particular property. Some of the concerns I heard was that they didn't have any permits, and I think the city had weighed in, and just wanted to know what the status of that was.
This is a pending matter.
Pending matter,
yeah,
okay, that's fine. That's all you need to say, thank you. And then on the tiny home on wheels that you referenced, the jurisdictions that have approved it in the past, like Santa Cruz and others, how do they vary from what you're recommending here?
I think the primary distinction between some of those other areas and us is that, we're a much more city environment, whereas places like Santa Cruz County and Placer County have a lot more rural and, forest wildland areas. Santa Cruz County, for example, specifically mentioned in some of the preamble to the ordinance that this was a way they saw to help some of their residents recover from various wildfires that have occurred in that area. That was part of their, the recitals at the beginning. So in any of these other communities, they all have certain levels of design standards adopted, for them. But it sure seems like the primary difference in the communities that have brought on tiny homes and reels is they do tend to be a little less urban and with a little more. And these are counties that have put it up. So Placer County, thinking about going all the way up to Tahoe in the forests, or Santa Cruz County when you're in the mountains, different animal than in a more urban environment like ours.
And are you aware of any state funding to help contribute to the establishment of tiny homes in California? Any grant funding that
I'm not personally aware of any.
supports? Okay. And one other question I had about, we moved on. Okay, forgot what it was, but yes, at this time, I will open it up for public comment. If nobody else has any questions. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Sulpicio.
You'd mentioned the tiny home on wheels in Bright. Outside of that trailer, the tiny home on wheel, have there been any other requests for permit or interests, or is that the only, tiny home on wheel that is?
It's the only one in our community that I'm aware of personally. This has come up a couple of times over the years, but not in the context that we have seen more recently, such as the one you mentioned in Bright.
Okay, thanks.
And I just to be clear, so our current ordinance do allow for tiny homes, correct?
As an
but they
accessory dwelling unit.
only as an ADU.
somebody could build a small home.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be an ADU. So our current ordinances do allow for tiny homes. The issue at hand today, as you started, was that specifically adding wills. So did I get that correct?
Yes, because this is a vehicle
Okay.
by law.
And not up for, at least this discussion, is whether it should be connected to sewer or to water. That is, no matter what, wheels or no wheels, it needs to be connected to utilities.
That is our position, correct?
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on what we have in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have my question popped back into my head. Thank you for your. So somewhere I read that it might not apply for our regional housing needs or our, housing element. So I want to make sure that whatever we add on in the city as far as housing, that it contributes to that. And if there's a way to look at statutory changes so that we can get this included. I mean, I'm just trying to keep an open mind on creative ways of building housing in the future. And if this is not there, is it, or? Yes.
I'm sorry.
The attorney.
Can you ask it again?
Oh, I'm just saying that if this does or does not meet our regional housing needs, we need to have housing. We have housing requirements, with, HCD, so Housing Community Development. We have a partnership with the state to build housing. And if this is not fulfilling that, need, could we, find a way to make sure that it, could we seek an exemption?
If your question is your low-income RENA,
Yes.
it would have to be income restricted with some sort of recorded covenant that would make that, a permanent restriction or a long-term restriction. In terms of counting simply as units that are built, yes, they could be counted as a housing unit, but not to satisfy the lower income requirements.
I
without
see.
restriction.
Yeah, and I think it's also relevant to point out a lot of the challenges around meeting RENA capacity numbers is having dense housing. And so
Yes. I see.
most of our RENA allocation that is in the category that Jeff described are multifamily sites.
I see.
But it's not to discount, it's still a unit. So in terms of reporting production, if you permit them as, whether it's accessory dwelling units or primary, it still counts as a produced unit in the city. So,
And for context,
Thank you.
our target for this planning period that we're in is about 9,500 units in round numbers. So if these were to ultimately count, that certainly would help. But it's a big number nonetheless that we have to work on, holistically.
also want to just give to sort of complete the answer about, you asked about, are we aware of any grant funds at the state?
Yes.
I think the complete answer to that is it's possible to use certain state affordable housing funding sources for a tiny home community, but I believe, I'm not aware of one that would allow a tiny home community that aren't counted as permanent housing units. In other words, not hooked up to utilities, that sort of thing. That you see applications of tiny homes in certain situations where it's interim supportive housing, kind of in the homelessness space. That's a little different because that's a more of a shelter use versus a permanent housing use.
I see. Good to know. Thank you. Accept. Okay. Open for public comment at this point. I'll accept public comment, Madam Clerk.
Alicia Gutierrez.
I didn't want to go first, but here I am. So I just wanted to speak up in support of tiny homes. I have personally been looking into them for some time just because of the connections with Mercy Coalition and other organizations that I'm involved in. Want to acknowledge that that organization is mostly to serve the housing insecure. But I do believe that tiny homes are a solution for many of the reasons that were presented. We are in a housing crisis. We have a lack of affordable housing options. And when I think of, I've heard from friends and family members that it's just difficult to find affordable, I would say, entry-level housing. It's not even affordable. It's like 3-bedroom unit for $2,200. And I think of what that does to people just starting out or just getting out of school. You're pretty much forced to live with other individuals until you can earn the wages to afford that. So I feel like it's a solution for affordability, infill, I think that was mentioned, and just think this is an opportunity for West Sacramento to, again, show leadership and look at the opportunities, at least explore. I believe there's a workshop that's being discussed to look at the pros and cons. I don't know if that's on the table, but think that there are a lot of people that have really dug into the policies and understand the regulations like I do not, and would really love to learn and see if there is a solution that would welcome tiny home on wheels, and also just really kind of propel us into permitting structure and approval of tiny homes as ADUs and a solution where we are lacking affordable housing options. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Alicia, quick question. Can I ask you, in the location where you're thinking of adding tiny homes, is that associated with another structure on site?
So personally, we were looking on a property that we have, and so there are
Structure on site.
facilities there
Okay.
already, and yeah,
I have
utility
an idea what
hookups.
that is. Thank you. I have a question about that after.
Robin Davis.
Hi, very excited tonight. I'm Robin, and I live in my 160 square foot semi off-grid tiny home on wheels on my undeveloped residential property here in West Sacramento. I'm very excited and thankful for my tiny home to help represent this movement and be on the agenda today. West Sacramento is the first in the entire Sacramento region to get this far in the tiny home on wheels legalization conversation. So we should all be really proud of that. I first purchased the property in October of 2020, and when I started to attempt to summarize the last 3 years into 3 minutes, I realized that was impossible. So I just wanted to share how grateful I am to be in this city, for my neighbors rallying and support for this movement, and for those original conversations with staff 3 years ago. Those conversations ignited such curiosity and discovery that would give this little home such a big purpose. When I was originally told, no, you cannot keep your wheels. No, there are no off-grid options. No, there are no alternatives for impact fees. Everything was no, and here we are today, opening minds and continuing this ever-evolving conversation. This home represents a movement towards sustainability and simplicity, freedom of options, and getting the power of choice back to the people. It truly aligns with the same core values that many of us in this room share and envision for our city. I understand there are some who look at my home with concern or fears of who might be living in this type of dwelling. But as I've said before, we no longer have the luxury to continue to allow stereotyping and fear dictate who is worthy of basic needs. Regardless, we want to ease as many minds as possible through outreach and education to reduce that fear of what is currently the unknown for our city. This ordinance is a way to set a standard just like with any other type of housing. We first define what a tiny home is, then where we can put them, and lastly, how they should look. So we respectfully request that council allow the Tiny Home Industry Association the opportunity to present and answer questions. To have volunteer industry experts ready and available for our city is an invaluable resource that we should welcome and take advantage of. Coupled with staff's research and hard work and community feedback, we can truly create something unique. We want a fair and equitable process that is inclusive of input from all stakeholders so we can create a well-rounded ordinance that will be an example for the region. Let's show this entire state that we will continue to innovate and maintain the title of being a pro-housing city.
Thank you, Robin.
Andrea Montano.
Good evening, Council. Madam Mayor. Forgive me, I have a heart condition, so this does sometimes become difficult. My, how far we've come. Thank you in advance for opening your hearts today. My ask is to allow a 20-minute presentation and a mini workshop so residents may have ample notice to participate in this conversation. What a unique opportunity for this city, your residents, and your homegrown workforce. Just the other day, a memory popped up from when I first spoke here a year ago. I saw Robin as a beacon of light, just a stone throw over Tower Bridge Gateway, trying to do what I was also trying to do. And I wanted to help her because I believed in her. Over the year, we shared knowledge about tiny home building applications and standards, from International Residential Code adherence to California Health and Safety, HCD, NOAA, ANSI, RVIA, and NFPA code compliance. We shared zoning text amendments happening throughout California and across the country that prove that HCD approves this message. As an industry, we are growing up. We had to fight a lot of stigmas and widespread media misconceptions. We had to undo a lot before we can even start. We've witnessed Maine and Colorado pass statewide tiny-friendly policy, and Georgia just celebrate 2 ribbon-cutting ceremonies for tiny home communities constructed just under 2 years. We've tried to reach as many people as possible in the capital region and share as much as we can with our board of directors, chief architects, urban planners, and commissioners. We've conducted our own due diligence homework down to the 6-element housing update, RENA gaps, master plans, and mining our own census data respectively. We are all glaring at the same reality of our fragility, and the majority of the shift is happening right now. I'm sure we can all see that now, including the interplay and the critical reach components and the ripple effects of how deeply housing affects the whole human and how quickly people can fall off of the housing ladder with no way to pick themselves up. Council, we are still unstereotyping ourselves and trying to find ways to show up for the myriad of issues: public safety, public health, climate change, disaster recovery, the demand for cheaper housing faster, the need for more co-housing communities, the importance of food sovereignty, and also our permaculture, meaning our intentional relationship to each other, these lands, and all its inhabitants. Like Alfred Melbourne says, we are all connected. The one thing I have in common is that we are all Mother Earth's children, and we must care for her too. We tend to edify our efficiencies. We are good at recognizing when a job is well done, but in order to be effective, and I mean radically effective, we have to be bold and unapologetic and urgent. That is the dynamic we need in order to be effective. As we approach Thanksgiving, I'm reminded how grateful I am for the time I've spent here. I appreciate the progressiveness of this city, and honestly, that's why I'm still here, because I believe in you. Aaron, you have historically aided the building of many roofs over our heads, and I commend your stimulus work in the area of redevelopment and revitalization. I hope that you can continue to hear us in a public forum. Thank you.
Thank
you. Bruce Monahan.
Good evening, Mayor Council. I just threw away my notes. Based on staff presentation, I want to start with, I would recommend that you adopt staff presentation as a minimum starting point. I'm not going to repeat the housing crisis issues that we're in. The fact that we need more and more tools, different kinds of tools, different opportunities, not only to build homes, but to build affordable homes. I think one of the things that's important here is we're really talking about 3 different kinds of homes. We're talking about ADUs, which are a recognized development program provided by the state. We're talking about tiny homes constructed on site, which actually has a code definition in our building code because of the unique applications within a tiny home. And then we're talking about tiny homes on wheels, which, as staff has pointed out, is actually a motor vehicle. And I think that's where most of the fear comes from, because it's a motor vehicle and there's questions on whether or not it's built to what kind of codes and what it looks like. When I looked at the beginning of the year, there were 13 public jurisdictions that allowed tiny homes on wheels, which are DMV-registered vehicles on residential lots. And they do this through a process of trying to control what that licensed RV is. It can't be a powered RV and it can't look like a trailer. And so it has architectural controls. So I think that the idea that you can have a DMV licensed vehicle on a site has already been proven out in other public jurisdictions. And so I think staff is right. They should be allowed. HCD has confirmed that a tiny home on wheels is equivalent to an ADU relative to regional housing allocation, and it can be counted towards that. So I think as a starting point, because this is a move forward, this is more tools in the toolbox trying to provide housing, I believe there should be tiny homes on wheels, on properties as primary units. I think we need to get there. If we get there in 2 steps, we get there in 2 steps. But I think you're bold enough, take that step because everybody's moving that direction already. We need to be able to provide houses quickly, cheaply, and affordably, not only to build, but to live in. Tiny homes on wheels use less utilities. Tiny homes on wheels have the ability to be independent of an electrical grid and independent of a utility grid. And what could be a better scenario than building your housing count in a city and not impacting the electrical grid demand, not impacting your water and sewer demands? I think it's good to be able to have tiny homes on wheels hooked up to utilities. Other public jurisdictions have temporary hookups, permanent hookups. Different jurisdictions look at it differently. So I would ask that the council, as a minimum, support and ask staff to move forward with this discussion and bring forward an ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Hirsch.
Good evening, Mayor Guerrero and members of City Council. My name is Alex Hirsch, and I'm speaking on this item as a resident of West Sacramento, a housing policy staffer in the California State Senate, and a former member of the City of West Sacramento Planning Commission. As we all know, California is in an affordable housing crisis. According to the California Association of Realtors, only 16% of home buyers in California could afford to purchase a median-priced single-family home in 2023. Now, the City of West Sacramento has been a leader in the region when it comes to supporting housing of all types, including affordable housing. Some of the more recent notable projects include micro-apartments like the Kind Project, or co-housing projects like Washington Commons. But the city can do more. The solution to solving our housing crisis is to support a diverse variety of housing available at all price levels. The average square footage of new housing in West Sacramento is over 2,500 square feet. But the housing needs of a solo retiree or a recent graduate may be very different than the needs of a large family looking for a large house. We need to think bigger by thinking smaller. Streamlining the approval process and making it easier to build smaller, more affordable homes is the path towards solving our housing crisis and making home ownership attainable for so many. Tiny homes on wheels can be part of that solution. I had the opportunity to attend a tiny homes expo a few months ago, and it opened my eyes to the issue of tiny homes on wheels, being able to see so many different elegant designs available at prices that are much more affordable, especially to people who wouldn't be able to afford that median-priced home. I urge the council to consider something similar to Pathway 3 laid out in the staff options tonight. Tiny homes on wheels should be allowed not only as an accessory dwelling unit, but as a primary residence. To limit these homes to only being ADUs would essentially price out many people who don't have the financial means to purchase a piece of property with existing housing on it, and then also afford a tiny home on wheels, but it would instead, if allowed as a primary dwelling, make it much more within financial reach for so many, especially again, perhaps those solo retirees or young adults just starting out in their careers. The pathway could also address some of the issues that have been raised today in regards to the permanence of a home. As Councilmember Early mentioned, these dry, wet utility connections could be required in any city ordinance that was designed. Objective design standards could be required in the ordinance design to maybe curtain the wheels to make these homes appear to be more like traditional homes. But in short, again, I urge the council to consider this issue seriously and support tiny homes on wheels in West Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Terry Robinson?
Hello, I'm Terry Robinson. Actually, I'm a solar pioneer, having gone off-grid in 1980, 2 years after the first solar panels were sold for residential use. At that point, well, Jay Schaefer is known as the father of the tiny house movement. Jay Schaefer wrote a book and started making tiny homes on trailers. If Jay Schaefer is the father of tiny home movement, I'd be the grandfather of the tiny home movement. Having built a yurt, 20 acres in Mendocino County. 10-year battle with the county of Mendocino to where we got what was called Class K owner builder occupied housing. As long as we met the minimum standards of safety and health, we could build a house based on the fact that it wasn't being built for speculation sales. Owner builder occupied. Now, myself, I have a RV, which is a converted airport shuttle bus, which I've made into a rather fancy unit. It's a showman's caravan. P.T. Barnum would probably be jealous of it. When you hear of tiny house on wheels, these things are getting a little bit outrageous. Some of them are up in the $200,000 range. And they look great, but Oakland and Santa Cruz and a couple others do allow RVs and vans. Now, say I was 40 years younger and my wife was having a hard pregnancy, and I had to work so hard to keep up with the house payments, but Aunt Tilly in Minnesota had an RV, and she was willing to come and park in our driveway while she took care of my wife, who was having a hard time with a pregnancy. And she was going to come here and stay in the RV, but that's illegal to live in an RV or a van on someone's property. And that's outrageous because there's a direct need, and an accessory dwelling unit, or what Jerry Brown called a granny unit, would add equal value to our taxation problem. And if it's all about money, why doesn't the city just issue a permit, like $40 a month, that someone can come and stay temporarily on someone's property for 4 or 6 months or even a year? You'd get the same amount of taxation money as you would if I built a granny unit. But when it's all said and done, they leave and my permit and the licensing stops. Now, say I have my offspring and I don't want them to have to move to Arkansas to live, to find something cheap, and I want to put a unit in my backyard. This is where tiny houses are very important to keep families together and keep the fabric of social justice alive. I thank you. Thanks for entertaining this.
Thank you.
Bob Schabert?
Good evening. I'm going to keep it real brief. Sitting in the audience, I was kind of doing a little bit of Google searching. If I go out and buy a 65-foot double-wide trailer, I'm going to pay $160,000 in north in price. And when it's delivered to the lot, it's on wheels. What's the difference between a small unit or a big unit on wheels? I'm sure council can draft some language that would address something for the tiny homes, something that will help our community. Not everybody can afford a $160,000 trailer on wheels, but they can afford a small one. I've got veterans at the VFW Hall that are homeless. This would be a perfect solution for them. There's a lot of people that can take advantage of the tiny homes. I seriously encourage the city council to come with some language that would mirror the big mobile homes that would work for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no additional requests to speak on this item.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, closing public comment, bringing it back to council. Are there any additional questions? Yes, Councilmember Early.
I'm curious because this is a great discussion, and am I able to ask questions of Robin, since you are the singular person who has the singular tiny home on wheels? I'm just curious, how big is your lot?
It's about 7,400 square feet.
Okay. What's that in acres? Is that like a quarter
Under
acre?
a
Half
quarter.
It's about a quarter acre?
Under a quarter, yeah.
Okay. And is it in the, like, Broderick, is it in the State Streets area,
Right.
Southport,
In
right? Okay. Thank you. That was for me. That was all for me. So I don't know if you all have looked around for a property as of late. I actually have been looking for property. And if you look in Southport, if you look in my district, actually, right? Because if I wanted to stay in my district, how much does property cost? There's a couple of lots actually right down the street from my house. And it's, one is roughly around $456,000 just for the lot. And it is, I think, roughly like an acre, maybe, right? Maybe two. Another one is like $416,000 just for the lot, right? And then I got to really looking. Verna, I started looking in your district because, again, I was curious, right? If I want to stay in Southport, what do I? It's all around that, right? Between $400,000 and $500,000. I did start looking at what Councilmember Alcala will be your district, and as long as I don't try to stay in the rivers, that's also just as expensive. You go out into Broderick and Bright, and similar, right? It's going to be significantly less expensive to get those lots. I promise you I'm coming to a point. My concern would be if we allowed for primary, what we would end up seeing, simply because of costs, right? As you pointed out, sir, $160,000 just for the unit alone. Maybe we say 50, maybe we say 60, is what you would end up having is mostly in Bright and Broderick, because simply it's cost effective, right? I mean, like, why spend $500,000 on a lot and then, right, put $50,000 tiny home on wheels on it? And you would have a concentration of, and so I go back and forth of what would be fair. So yes, Councilmember Alcala, I would love to hear.
I was just going to say, I think we've always had the idea that mixed housing is very important. And someone talked about having a community of small homes. I mean, obviously, you know, there's property out there in those areas where we can think of that alternative housing. I think Mr. Hirsch sort of mentioned, you know, we can definitely think out, you know, outside the norm. And if we had a planning commission that obviously is very open to this, I mean, there isn't any reason why we couldn't develop properties outside just the Broderick Bright area.
We wouldn't be developing it. We'd be trying to encourage somebody else to develop it,
well, that's
right?
what I'm saying. Right, no,
Be
not
fair.
us. Yeah. When I say we, I'm talking about us as a
The global
community.
we.
Right, the global we. So I don't believe that, you know, the concentration would only be in Broderick and Bright. Robin happens to own a property. No, she happens to own a property there. She could probably fit maybe 2 or 3 other tiny homes on there.
In Bright.
In Bright, but that could also be, you know, the case. I mean, there's a lot of land out there in Southport and those areas where definitely there could be a lot of construction. So if a developer did come out and stuff, it wouldn't all be concentrated in one area. I think one of the concerns that I've seen, and this in no way is a reflection. I love the tiny homes. As a matter of fact, when Robin first came out, you know, I had a very strong discussion with her. I came out in support. And as for different parts of the city, I know what your concern is, that we concentrate everything in one area. I think if we make diligent effort, and we have a planning commission that's very open to that, I think we could have these tiny home areas in other parts of West Sacramento. So we don't all have to concentrate them in the Broderick Bright area. It doesn't have to be a property owner. It could be a development. And then you would have people encouraged, you know, to buy these tiny homes out there.
I love where you're going, and I think I think there is a world in which we could encourage developers to try to do that. But again, it would be on we'd be requesting, right? Private developers buy property and make this happen, right? And so you would be asking, well, so to be fair, you would be asking a market to respond to something like this. And
I think the market's there, though.
I don't, as someone who sits on SACOG and housing, we would like them to encourage, as we heard stats, but that's not currently where developers or how they're building.
No, I understand that. No.
I wish it was, because actually demand is there,
Yeah.
but that's not where they're putting their money.
But I think there are incentives that we could put out there for people. And I mean, when I think of these tiny homes, I see people like Robin, young people who don't want to get stuck with a 30-year mortgage. And you have a lot of retirees, who want to downsize. And I think the market is definitely there.
I'm not arguing that there is a need and there absolutely is a market. The only thing I'm highlighting is that if, again, it's just up to the free market, and right now that's all we're talking about here, it is going to be concentrated in Broderick and Bright simply for cost reasons. But that's just the current reality. I'm not saying that there's not a reality that we could envision in the future and try to encourage and incentivize.
I understand what you're saying, but also looking at the properties in Broderick and Bright, because my mom has me take her every so, just to get out. I don't want to be stuck in the house, so I drive around there. And there really aren't those many open lots.
There's a few. Again,
there are a few, but
I was
very
looking.
few. Yeah,
and they're
so was
very
I.
affordable.
And yes, they are. But then again, if you're talking about open lots, you're maybe looking at 4 or 5, at least the ones I've seen. So 4 or 5 doesn't seem like a big concentration in Broderick and Bright. Robin's the only one right now with 1. But there are other places out there in other parts of West Sacramento that definitely would be ideal, for a community rather than just private individual lots and someone setting up tiny.
Yes, Councilmember Sulpicio Hall.
First, I'd like to thank staff for all their time on this. There have been lots of meetings, lots of questions. Thank you, Robin, for showing me your property. My family and I, we've been fascinated with the tiny house movement for a very long time, on wheels and not on wheels. And I do believe that it gives the opportunity for people to live differently and to be more intentional. And so I won't bury the lead. I support pathway number 3. I do believe that connections to sewer and water are very important. I could be convinced that not being connected to power with proper solar could be appropriate. I do think, though, when we're talking about affordable housing and making meaningful numbers having to do with our RENA allocations, we're going to see that with higher density properties. And it's been mentioned our very progressive housing policies. We've always got affordable housing in the mix. Tonight we've got 2 that are currently being built, 2 in the pipeline. And when we talk about the market, any developer will tell you when they're building, it's density, and density goes up, not out. And so I think pathway 3 is great for the conversation that we're having tonight, to give Robin the ability to live on her land. I think the tiny homes on wheels communities that you've seen are temporary solutions to a long-term problem, and they wouldn't be permanently brought as a development. You don't see them for a reason. And so supportive of pathway 3, but I do think that when we're talking about making meaningful changes to provide more housing, the building is going to be, we're going to be building higher, and we're going to be building more higher density mixed use properties for what the market's going to ask for.
Okay, I do have a couple questions. So when I heard our speakers reference some ideas, I was curious to know whether structures like a church can add on, they had such a huge lot, tiny homes on their lot. Can somebody answer the, no, just. He's who we're gonna hold accountable.
We would treat that as housing, and to the extent wherever this hypothetical church was located, if it allowed for multifamily housing also, we would still need to look at whether or not these are how the tiny homes would be built. If they are built, if either factory built or conventionally built, i.e. they built them on site, versus the ones on wheels. Because that's really the crux of it tonight, is the ones on wheels.
I see. So if the ones on wheels, if it could be built on a church, could it be more than one?
If that's something we would have to provide for, is the ones on wheels outside of a park. So that's part of what the discussion is tonight, is we could now recognize what is essentially a vehicle as a legal dwelling in our zoning code, and then we would be able to proceed with having them. But where our focus here has been on, tiny homes going on an individual lot, we haven't done anything with the tiny home community. I know there's a lot of in the media, late, but that's a different animal than what we've been bringing forth tonight. Wanted to do a much larger group of tiny homes.
Okay. And then on pathway 3, would that allow for more than one tiny home on a lot?
Well, presumably they would be able to do a primary unit and a secondary unit, or what we're now called ADUs in that scenario. Some of the lots could even be split, and you could wind up with 4 units on a lot potentially. Some of our lots that are good size are really ripe for some of the ministerial lot splits that have been passed through SB 9 and 10 over the last couple of years, to try to also get more infill housing in infill areas. So it's certainly possible, if we have one as a primary unit, then be able to do it at an ADU also.
I think that's a key policy consideration the council should give some direction on, since this is a workshop. We had kind of anticipated that question may come up.
Well, no, you could
It would
split
be on the
lots
same
up.
lots.
Doesn't matter.
The question is if you allowed tiny homes as a primary use, so option 3, just to be clear, under what David just described, you would also allow an additional tiny home as an ADU
Oh, I see.
without
But you
without
can
placing
also
any
split the
restriction on
lots.
that distinction.
You could
So
also
it's just
split the lot.
something you should talk about.
Yeah. Then you could have
I did
4.
want to make one point that we would have to talk about. Some of what I think people have in mind is multiple tiny homes on a single parcel,
Right.
all under separate ownership.
Mm-hmm.
That we'd have to figure out how that would work, because you're going to run into the Subdivision Map Act, and you're going to run into other issues of trying to have multiple owners of a single lot. Would it be more like a condominium project? There may be ways to work through it, but it's
That, I guess, I didn't know that. That's why I asked. So apparently it doesn't. But that's the answer.
It does in the
Oh, it
scenario.
does.
So if you take option 3 and you say a tiny home can either be an ADU or a primary use,
Right.
without placing any additional restrictions, say for example, if it's a primary use tiny home, you can't
On
also
wheels.
have an ADU tiny home.
On with.
I suppose you could do that, and I think that's the discussion we would want to hear direction on, if you're interested at all in placing any limitation on that. If not, if everyone's fine with the idea that you have a tiny home as a primary use,
I'm not.
we would also
So,
allow
we
an
should be clear.
ADU as a
You
tiny
don't
home.
want
No, I would
just
it would
one
be-
tiny home
yeah,
as a
it would-
primary
as an
unit,
ADU.
and no ADU attached to that.
So I'm in favor of staff recommendation. So I wanted to be clear. It was number 2, which was
number
that there
2.
be a primary and an ADU. Again, tiny home on wheels, because that's really,
Correct.
I'll just keep
okay.
bringing us
On,
back.
on wheels.
Yes, tiny home on wheels as an ADU.
I just
Scenario 2.
I just want to say that, okay, just to add, I think, can I get a hand of pathway 3?
I don't mind being outvoted.
Okay, pathway 2? It was.
I think I know. I think I know what it is.
Yes.
You got 3 to 1.
And I think the only reason I'm not offering an opinion on that
Not a
last
vote.
topic, but I just, because this is a workshop,
But so now,
I think it's something the council should weigh in
provide
on.
the direction.
Feel
For the
free.
single, well, no, I mean, you're a part of the discussion. So the discussion next is, do you want to have just one tiny home on a lot, or do you want to allow for multiple? Right? Is that the next discussion you want direction on?
My suggestion was that on the nuance of the ADU part. So we're not talking about,
Nuance of
10
the
tiny
ADU
homes
part.
on one lot. We're saying if you allow them as primary uses, do you also allow an ADU tiny home on the same lot? So it would be 2.
I think it's complicated with the separate ownership. That's where I think it'll get complicated.
On wheels.
They'd be the same owner. It would have to be, to Jeff's
Have to
point,
be
it would
the
have to be the same owner.
Yeah,
Right.
then it's fine. But if it's a new owner on that, I think it gets complicated.
So my thought would be a single tiny home on wheel on a parcel.
On one parcel. Okay. So then,
So can
So
we
we're
get
going
direction
away
on
from
that?
our infill housing and that?
no, she's trying to,
No, I understand, but that's, didn't we have that discussion in regards to just our goals in housing
Oh, you mean-
lots and,
yeah, we,
because it would be a tiny home on wheels, right?
well, that's what the council member early said, this is not gonna, she just said.
Yeah, I don't believe that, I would not consider this infill housing.
No, I
think-
know, that's actually what I'm saying.
Right, he's acknowledged.
Yeah, so adding 2 tiny homes on wheels, theoretically, I'd like to be a little bit more conservative in our policy at this point
Okay.
on what we would allow.
So I think what I suggest also, Jeff just made a good point, that we should do some research also, because if we're allowing tiny homes as primary uses.
On wheels.
Tiny homes on wheels.
Tiny homes on wheels is a primary use. As a official dwelling unit.
Right.
There is state law around ADU, so we'll need to look at that nuance
I
as well
see.
to
That's a
see,
good point.
can you, even if you wanted
We
to,
even
could you
restrict
restrict
it.
that?
Yeah.
So we'll be back with that
Thank you.
additional consideration when we bring back an ordinance.
I think then we have that. So what'll happen, you'll bring it back. So there was another comment about having additional discussion, but for me, a public workshop, this is the discussion. It have multiple public. We got a lot to deal with. Next is our on-demand rideshare options, which is a huge issue. But I do want to say that I think there has been some public discussion. I think with the tiny home owners, they've held lots of workshops, and then there was a planning commission meeting discussion. So and then this workshop. This is the opportunity before council. So yes, if you want to continue to have discussion and influence the policy, I don't, know that we're going to continue to have discussion on the ADU component of it. And so you can speak with each of us separately if you'd like, and continue the discussion, which is fine. Or we can't be together because we are taking action on this, but definitely you can continue to speak with us. I think all of us learning more. And with that, I think, are there any other thoughts? Okay. Mr. Tilley, do you have enough information to work off of?
Yes, I do, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your hard work on this. I know it's been a long time working on this, so thank you so much for doing this.
Not nearly as bad as cannabis.
Okay, so next, can you lower the podium, David, if you don't mind? Next is item 11 under Community Development, is a workshop on the future of the city's on-demand rideshare program, and our Senior Transportation Planner, Stephanie Chan. Please proceed.
Do you have my, okay, great. Good evening, Mayor Guerrero and members of the council. My name is Stephanie Chan, and I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the Community Development Department. Tonight, I'm here to present a workshop on the future of the city's on-demand rideshare program. In June of 2023, the City Council approved Amendment 5 with Nomad Transit LLC. This was the last allowable contract extension per the original contract approval. So as such, in July 2023, staff returned to City Council to seek approval for release of the request for information to understand the on-demand rideshare operations and current market, and then share out options to Council with how to move forward following the RFI. The purpose of tonight's workshop is to present City Council with an update and gather feedback for the future of the on-demand rideshare program. So to provide some background, the on-demand rideshare program was launched in 2018 after extensive coordination and feedback from the TMI Commission and the City Council to offer an alternative to private car transportation in the city with minimal local transit service and a difficult pedestrian network. The city ended up awarding a contract to Nomad Transit, a wholly owned subsidiary of Via Transportation. Nomad provides the city with a turnkey service, meaning that they assist in providing the city with everything needed to operate the service, the technology platform, the Via app, which is why the majority of residents know it as Via, the vehicles, and the drivers. Next slide. Currently, the on-demand rideshare service is set up to provide corner-to-corner rideshare service throughout the city, and the on-demand rideshare service is highly flexible and deploys up to 11 vehicles dependent on ridership trends. So throughout the day, it might be 4 vehicles available and one wheelchair accessible vehicle if historic ridership trends show that ridership at that time is lower, thereby allowing the city to exercise some cost savings and not have the whole fleet out there if not necessary. The city operates the service Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., Saturday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Fares are $3.50 for a single ride, plus $1 for additional passengers. Frequent riders may purchase a $15 Via Pass, allowing for 4 rides a day up to for 7 days. And eligible riders, aka riders with disabilities or our seniors, may receive a 50% discount on fares following eligibility approval from the city. Next slide. This slide here provides some ridership trends since we launched the service in May of 2018 to September of 2023. So since our launch for our service, we have completed over 728,000 rides. In fiscal year 2023 alone, we completed 188,000 rides. You can take a further look at the rest of this data, but you do see that we have bounced back and exceeded our ridership highs pre-COVID since about August of 2022 timeline. And additional data that I'd like to share, not shown on the slide, is that we do see an average of 12 rides per rider per month, an average of 5 rides per rider a week. So we do have a select proportion of our riders who heavily rely on this service. Additionally, nearly 50% of our riders take more than 5 rides per month, and nearly 30% take more than 5 rides per week. Next slide. So staff typically returns to City Council with a contract amendment and fee schedule every fiscal year. The fee schedule for fiscal year 23-24 was approved by Council in June of 2023 and is shown here. Additional details are provided in attachment 2 to the agenda report, but typically these are the high-level details. The total cost for the contract in the fiscal year 23-24 is about $3.3 million. The city uses a mix of fair revenue reinvestment, the Transportation Development Act funds to support the service. And then additionally from this slide, you can see the cost per ride is approximately $15.36. This is the contract budget plus staff time divided by the projected ridership. Next slide. So the fiscal year 23-24 amendment and fee schedule, like I said, was the last allowable contract extension per the 2018 contract award. When we released the RFI to solicit information regarding the current microtransit market, we shared with Council additionally some options that we thought would be paths forward following the RFI. This included potentially a sole source with Nomad Transit if the RFI identified that there weren't other operators out there that could provide the service that the city was looking for, or if there were significant cost increases to go with a different operator. A second option was to release a competitive procurement if we did receive enough interests and operators that could provide a similar service. The third option was to partner with the Yolo County Transportation District. Since we released the RFI, we did not receive a response from Yolo County Transportation District. However, we did have conversations with staff at Yolo TD. Our high-level conversation, because Yolo TD now runs a microtransit service, when the city first launched our on-demand ride-share service, Yolo TD wasn't in microtransit yet. Since then, they have launched their own. They operate Beeline. They operate in the cities of Woodland and Winters, and they have a service that goes to Night Landing. And their current operations for that service, their operating budget for fiscal year 23-24 is about $1.3 million. Their service is a bit different from what the city operates. We operate, like I said, a corner-to-corner service, but Yolo TD has essentially virtual stops that are assigned in specific locations, so they have less stops than what the city offers. And then given our high-level conversation with Yolo TD, they believe that it would be challenging to provide the city with a similar service to what we're operating now, given labor, vehicle procurement, and potentially necessary infrastructure in order to operate and provide for future electrification of the service. Their initial cost estimates, if we were to partner with Yolo TD, estimated an increase of above the current 3.3 or the current about $3 million contract by $1.5 to $2 million. So total costs, if we were to partner with Yolo TD and have them operate the service, would be closer to $5 million. As such, staff is recommending that we prepare and release a request for proposal, since we did receive a sufficient number of responses in our RFI to solicit a vendor for the on-demand rideshare program. And the reason we have to do this is to follow the city's competitive procurement procedures. Next slide. And so these program goals on this slide were presented to the TMI Commission in June of 2023, and then it was included in the agenda report with the RFI to Council in July of 2023. I just wanted to share this here, but it will be included in the RFP, and there is opportunity for City Council to provide input on the program goals at this point if you would like. Next slide. So as the city moves forward with the request for proposals, it is also important to bring up the budget. Since the launch of the on-demand rideshare program, the city has heavily relied on the Transportation Development Act funds to support the program. The Transportation Development Act of 1971 provides funding to be allocated to transit and non-transit related purposes that comply with regional transportation plans. So TDA established two funding sources, the Local Transportation Fund, LTF, and the State Transit Assistance, STA. Providing certain conditions are met, cities can use LTF for local streets and roads, construction and maintenance, and other like pedestrian infrastructure or bicycle infrastructure needs if there are no transit requests that meet the Sacramento Area Council of Governments adopted definitions of unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet. So as long as we do not have any unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet, we can utilize TDA funds or LTF funds for other purposes. Otherwise, we would have to try to meet our unmet transit needs before we can utilize it for street and roads or bike ped infrastructure. In comparison, STA funding is a bit more restrictive and can only be used for transportation planning and mass transportation purposes. So generally here on this slide, the council can see that the city's TDA expenditures generally exceed the TDA allocations. This table is provided in your agenda packet as attachment 1. To provide a brief understanding of how to read this table, you can see the top section where you can see both the LTF allocation and the STA allocation, and then the sum of your total, the city's total TDA allocation by fiscal year. And then bolded in the middle row is then, or below that is the Transportation Development Act expenditures to SACOG and YOLO TD. So this is the funding that we need to provide SACOG for their administrative planning assistance to the city, and then for YOLO TD for the fixed routes and paratransit, and again, planning transit for the district. And after we utilize our TDA funds to pay for SACOG and YOLO TD needs, we then have remaining Transportation Development Act funds for city use. Again, you can see the remaining LTF and STA broken down because you can only use them for specific purposes. And then after that, you see the TDA expenditures the city has claimed by fiscal year. And as you can see, typically the annual expenditures exceed the claim. This table is just to show that the annual expenditures typically exceed the remaining allocation that we have left. The way we have to use TDA is that we have to use prior year reserves before we can use the allocation that year. So that's why we've had funding and are able to support these services that we wanted to claim for. The problem is that moving forward, we are coming up towards using all of our reserves. So if you can look at fiscal year 23-24, you can see that this one's structured a little bit differently. So you'll see that the STA has a negative amount, and that's because I just wanted to format everything similarly, but the reason why we did this was because SACOG recommended that the city utilize all of the STA funding we have to pay YOLO TD. In prior years, we have used LTF to pay YOLO TD for their transit services, but because STA can always be used for transit, YOLO TD said, you have a large reserve here. SACOG said, you have a large reserve here, just only use STA in fiscal year 23-24 to pay for your transit needs for this year. But so that shows you, if we were to have a total sum of TDA, that was you would take that away from the LTF, and we really only have $1 million that we had left in allocation for fiscal year 23-24, and our VIA contract alone, after we took out fair revenues, required us to look for about $2.9 million in funding. Next slide. So this slide provides a little bit more detail on the estimated balance of TDA funds after the fiscal year 23-24 claim. This table can be read from left to right. So the fourth column that says fiscal year 23-24 total available is the sum of the second column and the showing the carryover from previous years, and the third column showing the fiscal year 23-24 allocation. And then the last column is the difference between the expenses, so the fifth column, TDA claim expenses, and the total available. So you can see we used up all our STA, like I mentioned, because SACOG said that we have a large reserve. Use up all your STA first for paying YOLO TD services. And then from our claim in fiscal year 23-24, you can see we only have $1 million left in LTF funds. Of course, next year we'll get our fiscal year 24-25 allocation. But if staff were to estimate similar expenditures to YOLO TD and SACOG and a similar cost to running an on-demand rideshare program to the contract we had with VIA, we estimate a funding gap of approximately $600,000 to $800,000 for fiscal year 24-25, and it will increase to $1.6 million to $1.8 million after fiscal year 24-25. Additionally, another thing to note is that YOLO TD's fiscal year 23-24 budget identified an upcoming budget gap. YOLO TD's budget is included in your agenda report as attachment 3. For fiscal year 24-25, VLTD estimated a approximately $3 million funding gap across all the agencies in the district, and then increasing to, I believe, $6 million the following fiscal year. They did recommend some opportunities to fill that funding gap, one of which they have not determined what route they will go, but one of which was collecting more TDA dollars from the local jurisdictions. Next slide. Again, based upon all the previous slides shown, the city does significantly subsidize the rideshare program. The cost per ride, after we reconciled all the costs and everything, the actual cost per ride cost per rider is determined by the cost of operations. So we calculate that with the contract of VIA plus staff time and divide that by ridership. So for fiscal year 22-23, the actual cost per ride was $14.94. The estimate for fiscal year 23-24 is approximately $15.36. I would like to note that this doesn't account for fare box revenue reinvested into the program. So if you were to take into account fare box revenue and what the city actually pays, is that for fiscal year 22-23, the actual cost is about $13.24 a ride. So it's still, in around the $12 to $15 range per ride. We approximately estimate like 200 to 300,000 in fare revenue every year. And I think in fiscal year 23-24, it's about 300,000. In comparison to the cost per ride, the fares that we have set is $3.50 for a regular fare, and then also $15 for our frequent pass program. To provide some context, if a person is maximizing the use of their VIA pass, the cost per ride to that user would be approximately 54 cents. And we do have a lot of riders who use our VIA Pass program. Approximately 25% of our weekly active users hold a VIA Pass, and then approximately 45% of all weekly rides are taken using a VIA Pass. Next slide. So in comparison to the city's on-demand rideshare service, staff has pulled some data from some peer agencies. The agenda report provides some additional detail on how the service parameters of these, of how these services have initiated and grown over time. But over here on the slide, I just provide some details on how the service currently operates. The city of Arlington, Texas launched their on-demand rideshare program shortly before the city in December of 2017. Currently, their service operates Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. They initially started their fares at a flat fee, but they now have a distance-based travel fee, so it's $3 to $5 based upon distance, except for if you're doing a first mile, last mile gap connection from their Centerport PRE station, which is a station that's outside the city boundaries, but it connects to the regional transit station and allows for transfers, and that is only a $3 flat fare. They also increased their frequent pass their frequent rider pass program. So initially it started at $10. Now for a 7-day ride pass, similar conditions, 4 rides a day for up to 7 days, is now $25. And they also offer a monthly pass subscription for $80. They have a similar wait time to the city. They target a 12 to 15 minute wait time. The size of the city is approximately 99 square miles with a population of over 393,000. So they do have a significant number of more vehicles than the city utilizes. I believe they're utilizing approximately 66 vehicles as compared to the city's 11. The cost of their operations is pretty significant. They spend $11 million annually, funded by a mix of fare revenue, reinvestment, local funds, and FTA funding. I would like to note that for Arlington, that number of 11 million is specifically for their VIA service. Their contract with VIA incorporates a couple other programs. They have expanded their program to allow for free rides for students, and that's separate from this cost. And then they also have a more innovative, sorry, I'm blanking on the word, auto-driven, not driven by a person, autonomous vehicle, sorry. And they have a couple autonomous vehicles in their fleet as well that are not included in that $11 million budget. So their total budget that they're paying via is higher than that, but to provide a comparison to the city services, they have an $11 million annual contract. Next slide. Another city that staff pulled for comparison for the council is the city of Cupertino. The city of Cupertino launched their on-demand rideshare service in October of 2019. And I would also like to note that they did pause their service a bit during the pandemic. The city of West Sac did not. So they're still working out, and in the way their service is a bit more newer because they paused their service for a bit. But currently their service operates Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. They have a similar fare structure to the city, except for their discounted fares. They also provide discounted fares for students and low-income riders. Similar wait time of 12 to 15 minutes. And their cost for operations for fiscal year 23-24 is approximately $3.2 million. This is a pretty good comparison to the city of West Sac because their city size is about 11.3 square miles, and they have a population of 60,000. Their service does show that it increases to 5.8 million in fiscal year 26 to 27, but that's because they received a grant and partnered with the city of Santa Clara for expanding into the city of Santa Clara and also changing their fleet to all electric vehicles. So that 5.8 million accounts for the service expansion and the fleet change. Yes. Staff developed a survey to identify trade-offs and priorities on the on-demand rideshare service. The draft survey is included in the agenda report as attachment 4. We wanted to release this survey to assess the public's priorities, given that we're going out for a RFP, and understand what kind of trade-offs the community would be able to be okay with. Staff plans to synthesize the survey responses and consider the data that we receive when we when we evaluate the RFPs, and then we also will share the survey responses to City Council when we plan. If City Council agrees to move forward with the RFP, we will share the survey responses and how the survey responses shaped the on-demand rideshare parameters. Next slide. And so the survey questions that you can see on attachment 4 focus on aspects of the service model that riders have experience with, such as hours of operation, the service coverage areas, fares, etc. I would like to point out that some elements of the on-demand rideshare program impact others. So for example, if we were to reduce the service coverage area, that may reduce ridership and in turn may mean that we need less vehicles to operate the service. Other elements of the service are decisions that City Council or staff must make that may additionally affect the perception of the service. So, for example, currently the city does not allow marketing on our vehicles. We pay for, when we say marketing here on this slide, we mean more so what kind of services can Nomad Transit provide to the city in branding, wrapping the vehicles, encouraging new ridership, putting out like flyers, creating material for the city to post. But marketing can also apply to if the city were interested in ad revenue and incorporating ads into the vehicles. Other services do this and use it as a mechanism to fund the service. But it may affect the rider perception of the service. So these are kind of decisions that city council or staff can make that aren't necessarily tied to the rider and their experience with like the fares or the time or the coverage. Another example is vehicles. Beyond the number of vehicles that we can put out, the city can also consider the type of vehicle. Currently, the city uses Toyota Siennas. We have started with a kind of passenger van experience and kind of kept that vehicle as a passenger van experience. But there are other vehicles out there. The city staff has struggled with transitioning to a fully electric fleet because there are not similar vehicles out there that are fully electric yet. There are currently fully electric vans, such as the Ford Transit, that are other options of vehicles that would be that could be available for the on-demand rider service. And that in that way, vehicles, if there were different vehicles other than having an electric vehicle, a Ford Transit can hold more passengers than the Toyota Sienna. So there's also other opportunities of how the vehicle type alone can affect the service. Next slide. So moving forward, staff wanted to share this timeline here. So last week on November 8th, the staff presented a similar workshop to the TMI Commission. Tonight, we're presenting this workshop to the City Council. Following the feedback we heard from TMI Commission and the discussion we have City Council, we may make some adjustments to our request for proposal, or we will, depending on if City Council approves the release of the request for proposal. And following discussion, we may make adjustments if the discussion calls for it. And then staff is targeting a due date of January to February for the RFP submittals and a contract selection by March of 2024. If we are to go for a new provider, or if a new provider is selected, selecting a contractor by March of 2024 will provide the city with approximately 2 to 3 months to set up a new on-demand rideshare service operator and allow us to launch the service by July 2024 without any gaps in our on-demand rideshare program. Next slide. So this is supposed to be, so when we went to TMI Commission last week, and presented this workshop to Commission, we did hear some feedback. There was general overall support for the on-demand rideshare program, and the TMI Commission felt that they were open to options that would provide some cost savings to the city with minor adjustments to the service or external funding, or proposing that the city looks at external funding opportunities. So for example, inquiring if staff has any additional data to share on high ridership days and low ridership days and times, and potentially shaving off some hours of operation to allow for some cost savings. There was a discussion about whether or not to operate on Sundays, because as you saw, the cities of Arlington and Cupertino both do not operate on Sundays, although I believe the commissioners did make a point that Sunday service does provide a service for people who need it, and completely cutting that off was not what they would recommend. Additionally, the TMI Commission gave some feedback on the rider questionnaire and the input, possible ways that city staff can seek input, and they wanted city staff to focus on households with 0 vehicles and some of our neighborhoods where people are low income and need to rely on public transit. The revisions to the rider questionnaire hasn't been reflected in City Council agenda report just because of the timelines. There wasn't time to make those changes and include it into the City Council agenda report. But it was mostly just language changes so that we could make the survey more accessible to the general public. Next slide. So with that, staff had a few discussion questions that we wanted to bring up to City Council for consideration. Do the goals of the on-demand rideshare program need further adjustment? What elements of the on-demand rideshare program are important to maintain? And are there elements of the on-demand rideshare program staff should consider adjusting? And so with that, it concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions or we can go into
Can you just
discussion.
go to the last slide? Can you go to the last slide? There you go. Thank you. I just want
Slides aren't in here, are they?
not that one, but
any
her
of
other
them.
slide.
Trying to find them.
Like the goals are page.
No, the actual slide. There's,
Yeah.
okay.
So do you want to, do you want to go through and want to? You can ask. Sure, Councilmember Alcala.
Few quick questions. How many cars normally in the current fleet that we have? 11?
Yes, we have a fleet of
Okay.
11 vehicles. We actually have a few more just in case maintenance needs comes up, but we only
So
keep
that's what
max
I
11.
think.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, I was going to ask, and what about a shift? Do they operate all day, all 11, or do you break them up?
So it's dependent on the demand, and we base it on historical travel trends. So every few weeks, if it shows that like a certain day has lower ridership, we might take a vehicle offline. Or more so lately, we've been having, as you saw on the ridership trends, high demand. So we've been adding vehicles, but the shifts themselves, they are picked up by the drivers. And so shifts can range anywhere between like 2 to 9 hours, depending on what the driver selects to choose to work.
So they're independent contractors? Wait.
They're independent contractors.
Late hours, I can't imagine that there would be a lot of people using it as late as 11. What do you think?
We have a few. I don't have specific numbers off the top of my head, but I think currently we operate, like, last I saw, maybe 3 vehicles by the end of night.
Also, you kept great records. I was looking at those little charts and everything. Wonderful monitoring. Do you keep records on how many people you actually use in like work, school, or shopping?
We didn't. We can only we keep records, and I say that in quotes, in the way of we release a survey every now and then. So when we launched our service 6 months after, we did a rider survey. In 2022, we did a rider survey, but otherwise, the app does allow us, and the technology platform does allow us to see origins and destinations of the trips, but we can't for certain say whether that trip is necessarily for work or for grocery shopping or for whatever purpose.
I was just thinking it'd be a great offset. You know, everyone has a budget. Shopping merchants have, budgets. They could. Maybe we could partner with them, schools have transportation budgets, and depending on the workforce, I guess they would have budgets too. But, okay, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Members of PZO Hall?
Yeah, I wanted to know if Councilmember Early has anything, because we've been talking about SACOG and
I'm sure
YOLO
she does.
transportation, and I don't know. So I just have some general feedback, because I don't know if anything that you're going to say is going to answer to this, but because I was like, it's hitting all your assignments. Okay, so I'll say, I think VIA is fantastic. I don't want it to go away. But I don't think our hours of operation are actually accurate on certain nights. And I'd really love to have a partner with our operator that wants to work with us on specific nights. And so what's happening is that at during football and basketball season at the high school, students and their families, especially those in the north, aren't able to get home. And so Yellow Bus stops running at 6 and Via is the only public transportation option. So what happens is demand is high after games and people are calling rides, and you can either not get a ride because there's no drivers, or people will request a Via, wait 20 minutes, and the Via gets canceled. So what ends up happening after the football games is that band moms start making multiple trips around town to get all the kids home. So I would love to have an operator who would work with us, because these are specific nights that only happen a couple times a year, that we could bring on more drivers in order to get our kids around school when Yellow Bus isn't operating. I love the survey, and I'm wondering if, to kind of help with this conversation, possibly adding a question on there about how often you have rides canceled. That might be interesting to know, and if that data is being captured.
We do capture that data on the platform, on
That
our
already
app, so
exists.
yes.
So that would be fascinating to know how often are rides getting canceled, and if that is indicates other times where we need to have more drivers on the road. As for marketing, I definitely want an operator that will partner with us and market to the community about the services. We've got a new 322-unit apartment complex coming to my district, and it's going to be important for folks who are looking to rent there to know what microtransit options we have. And I am absolutely supportive of ad revenue to bring in additional income.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I have been just, thank you, I was being so rude. I'm sorry, Verna. Councilmember Specio Hall. I was trying really, really hard to find our hours in the staff, and I don't know if I'm just missing them. It's got Texas. Because I wanted, one, because that was a good point, Council Member Specio Hall, and two, I was just like, I don't remember our hours. I'm over here like, I think it might be like 11 on the weekends or 10. Could you? Do you know?
Yeah, so I put it in the slide, but I forgot to put it into the agenda
Okay.
report, I guess. But Monday to Fridays, we operate 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Saturdays, I believe, I always forget Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 11, and then Sundays, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, that's great.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Thank you. I could not remember to save my life. And I thought during the week it ended even earlier. Okay, so first I'll talk about the services that we have, which I think are amazing. They are so amazing, right? That Woodland just rolled out a similar, not exactly the same, service. I think it's called the Beeline, right? And it's got a little bee buzzing. To your point, it is run by the YOLO Transportation District, has significantly less hours in regards to how long it goes. I want to say, I don't even know if it starts at 6 a.m. And then it goes to, I want to say 8 p.m. So significantly different. And so I'm calling that out because I will tell you some of the things I've heard wearing my YTD hat, in which folks have said things like, hey, the hours need to be longer, talking about the Beeline, right? And so here, I don't think that's an issue for us. I'd be curious, as Council Member Alcala said, during the weeks, if 11 p.m. is too late. I do know many a parent that goes to Drake's and whatnot, and so definitely calls upon, right, our VIA to do that. Basketball games, again, there's nowhere to park, and I'm not even talking about like high school, I'm talking about like the Kings games, right, and whatnot, River Cats games, and so I'd be curious about like the uptick during those hours, and if there's some space we could shave off there. Also just things when you ask the question of, are there things we could add? So I just talked about all the great things, which is the hours. I think our hours are great. Again, curious to look at the data. I think it would be interesting to look at potentially having a discount for students for our entire city. One of the first things I did when I got here was advocate for free rides for VIA during particularly summer months from Broderick and Bright to our rec center. The reason why I advocate is because I commute to Broderick and Bright every single day. And so I thought, oh gosh, I can't even imagine as a parent, right? During the summertime, you want your kid to do something. But it would be great if we could do that for all students. And so again, now I'm adding expenses. So a couple of things as it relates to the budget for YTD. There's a significant fiscal cliff, right, that's coming. And I've been curious from our end how exactly we're going to be expected to fill in that fiscal cliff. And so I don't have solutions, but I am flagging it's a real thing. I think it was 6 million, right?
3 million next fiscal year, then increasing to 6 after.
Yeah, so in that 5-year projection on table 3, it's a 6 million, right, in 5 years. And I think that's important to flag because the only option, right, currently is going to be to look to jurisdictions like West Sac-Woodland and Davis to fill in that gap. And so again, just flagging that.
It is one of several of their options. They have identified possibly looking for additional external funding from like the federal government, but if all those opportunities don't really follow through, the TDA funding that is allocated to the cities is there.
Is that just Yolo County or is it regional?
So there's a fiscal cliff for transportation, for public transportation throughout California.
Okay.
Here, it's particularly larger because, I mean, realistically, our smaller counter costs are similar. I appreciate you flagging that they are going to look for what they call grant dollars. I am positive that they are going to look for additional grant dollars. As someone who runs a nonprofit, I look for grant dollars all the time. I don't always find them, despite the fact that I look. And so, as you will often hear me say, I do not operate on hope management. And so I do think it's a 5-year projection. We should at the very least start to plan accordingly, is what I would flag, and start to have those discussions. In addition to the fact that I appreciate that YTD is going to look for federal dollars. The other thing that I wanted to flag for us is ridership. And so one of the things that our representative on the Transportation Advocacy Committee, I'm sure I'm getting the word wrong, has noted, and I've heard as well, is there are less there are less bus routes that are running, right? So as we've continued to expand VIA, there have been less and less bus routes that have slowly been pulled back, particularly post-COVID. Some of those bus routes never came back to West Sacramento. And so I'm flagging, yes, feel free.
I just wanted to note that part of those changes were part of the comprehensive operations analysis that was kind of completed by Yolo TD. I think started before the pandemic, but was completed during the pandemic and took into account like potentially looking at ridership increases as bringing back online some service. But the Route 35 and 39 like suspensions and combining that to Route 37 came from that. And I believe that's what you're referencing.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I'm referencing, right? So which came first, chicken or the egg, right? So just, so we have VIA, and we have a on-demand program that is being offered to our residents. And then fast forward to your point, both pre and post pandemic, you have a ridership survey happening, right? Or assessment. And so again, what I am highlighting here is if there was no VIA, there also is no bus routes, right? To be able to account for, and maybe I should say if there was no ride share, we don't have to call it VIA. If there was no ride share, YOLO TD would have to step up significantly because to your point, yes, there was a survey or assessment done, but also to be fair, as a data person, it wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was happening while we still had VIA, both pre and during the pandemic. And again, kudos to us for continuing to offer this. And so again, to be fair, there was no ride share. I'm sure need would have increased. And so I don't necessarily know how when you talk about just feedback for this rideshare program, definitely it has to happen because we've now gotten to a point where it's needed because it is one of our main modes of public transportation here in West Sacramento. And so again, I didn't want to suck the oxygen out of the room, but those are all my thoughts.
So thank you, Stephanie. I know you've been working on this for a long time, and I had a chance to speak with NOBAD representatives a little bit back, and they've heard some of my interest in what I'd like to see in the future of our city's on-demand rideshare program. One is like our mobility action plan. This on-demand rideshare fits perfectly in that mobility action plan, which, you know, we all worked on to some degree to help achieve our goal, our vision to get people out of their cars and into, you know, other forms of transportation. And so in order for us to be able to meet our climate action goals that we've had projected, we do need to increase this type of resource here in the city. And I am interested in sending it out for a contract with the, you know, with the specific goals you have listed here. One of the other areas I'd like to see in the goals is regional connections. I don't know how we accomplish that, but working with Sacramento in some way and other outside of West Sacramento, I found that to be one of the limitations for the on-demand rideshare. And I don't know if we can do it now, but that might open it up for more fare box revenue in the future. But if we can maintain that, if there's a contractor who's like, you know, an on-demand rideshare program that's willing to cooperate and work with us in the future to expand that, that's not, you know, I just like to include that as part of planning in the future. In addition, one of the other areas is making sure that employees of VIA are adequately paid. And I don't know what that composition looks like, to ask. Is adequately paid. I think that's one of the issues on the overhead cost of YOLO, you know, transit is that, you know, they do get paid a lot more. So they could be competitive. I don't know if our current on-demand rideshare program has, you know, I just want to find out if folks are satisfied. So I want some kind of satisfaction survey, some kind of, you know, I want to find out how employees feel about working for VIA. And, you know, they are going to work directly with them, but I just want to make sure that whoever we contract with, you know, we can't put any demands on them, but seeing that they're, you know, feeling like they're getting all their needs met as well. So if there's a way to maintain a loop of, you know, communication so that we know that they're getting taken care of, that's something I'd like to address. The other is, you do have it here, is increase awareness of and provide convenient connections to multimodal actors. I think increased awareness needs to be stronger. I think we need to do more aggressive outreach to be able to get people to ride on VIA. I think that having them to be a partner of our chamber or, you know, whatever way to connect with the community, either in our schools and our, you know, so, you know, Councilmember Early's suggestion, like all of our schools, like if they go to each school, have a booth, educate the parents, send, just the school district has ways of connecting with the youth, so make that the operator has those connections and works in partnership, like even in our home run program, that they make those connections with the home run program so that our youth have access to that. And our senior living areas, our adult living you know, areas, that they become aware of it. Also, our I think we have our mobile farmers market. You know, just put literature, put information out. Yola County Children's Alliance, our you know, our you know, homelessness programs that we have there, that they become aware of it as well. Because they're, you know, trying to find employment and trying to get, you know, to from one place to another, that they become aware of it to be able to access something. So I'm not talking about discounts here, except for the seniors and the students. I support that. But yeah, that's some of the components I'd like to, raise. And then, as far as safety, I've heard some concerns about the safety of the riders and, or the passengers, sorry. And so I just want to make sure that we can figure out if we can get some kind of data on a regular basis about that issue.
So currently, we do receive safety data. If there is an incident, staff receives an email from VIA of the incident, the date of the incident, and what happened. Since that has been implemented, I probably receive one incident every 2 weeks or so. And sometimes I will say they are not even our driver's fault because there are other drivers on the road. Sometimes they're at a stop and the vehicle behind them will hit our vehicle. So we do currently receive that data.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. That's very helpful. Yep.
When did you start because you said since you've been receiving it?
I think in summer of this year. Mm-hmm.
I will say that our partnership with VIA, I think, has created some best practices that if we're going to put it out in a contract, that if we can incorporate some of that we can't take it for granted that it's going to be VIA, But what if somebody else comes in and then we didn't put it on our list of things that we like? That's help build that up. So whatever you've learned from that, include that as a requirement.
Mayor, may I?
Councilmember Alcala, go ahead.
I was going to say, the mayor brought up some great ideas where, can do the outreach, workforce development. I mean, that's one of the things that I often hear people who are trying to get jobs. They have no transportation because they don't have a job, have cars, can't get that transportation. So I think reaching out to places like that would really be important. Also, I know my mom, I've told her, Mom, why don't you take VIA? Because she waits around for me sometimes to give her a ride, and that's tough. So she tells me, because I don't know how to do the app. And I'll tell her, well, I can put the app in for you and stuff. So maybe someone, helping like the mayor mentioned, in the senior centers, someone actually going over there and showing them how to get that app in there. I know it's time consuming, but it's probably well worth it. So seniors know how to get on there.
Yes. So in the beginning of the program, there were sessions where staff provided public trainings to teach people how to use the program. Nowadays, we do encourage anyone who needs assistance to come to City Hall, and the transportation team at City Hall will take care of them and assist them in downloading the app and teach them how to use it. Otherwise, if we do have people who are not very technical friendly with their phone, they can call in and set up an account via a call to the program, and then call the call center to set up their rider pickup.
Anything else?
No, I was just going to mention maybe also, I keep thinking of the Afghan community, those communities out there. I know they have large congregations.
Affordable.
Right. And
Or in the congregations, like.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Even Holy Cross, I know I've seen some people walking, to church and stuff, and I think a lot of it, and I know where some of them live, so it's quite a little walk for them. So places like churches, that would probably help.
And if we have emergency, not emergency, some kind of natural disaster situations where it's very hot or power outages, if there's a way to incorporate communication on access to VIA during that period of time, I'm not saying free again. So, anyways, we could just incorporate awareness of access to VIA so they can come to get, access to our electricity or whatever type of support they need, or to stay warm or whatever, just because we've had those and people weren't aware of VIA. So there's a way to incorporate that in our messaging and partnership with them. That would be really helpful. And I also want to share a comment from Charlotte Dorsey, because I always talk about public transportation. She's been such a champion for this. And her comment is, I think VIA, and by the way, she represents BB Can, Roderick Wright Can, Community Action Network. Yes. She says, I think VIA Ride Share is one of the most inclusive and progressive services that West Sacramento has implemented in the past few years. Not only has it allowed seniors and disabled persons to conduct more normal lives, she didn't say this, but as the woman who can get her ice cream frozen home. But
That's
parents,
her?
but no, it wasn't her. But parents with young children, school children, can accompany the children to and from school. The only thing I would suggest is that the city promote via more. And she has talked with new residents who have no idea what those buses are all about, quote unquote. So just wanted to, emphasize the, just educating the public. I mean, that may be a little bit of us that we have to do a little more, but, just incorporating that. And I do like the idea. I don't know other people. I like advertisement. You're sitting on the bus, you're bored. So if we can do something like that, a little monitor, people can, and then we can include that as part of a revenue source. I think anything we can do to enhance revenue, that money, 1.8 million out there, that scared me. That's like a lot of money. I'm thinking we've got to figure out how to pare that back. And I don't know what ideas you have up your sleeve, Stephanie, but I'm sure you're going to be creative and help us figure that out. Along with YOLO Transit. Dante, you're going to solve that one, right?
I'm on it.
All right.
Mayor, I was just thinking also, I have a lot of new housing going up in my area. I'm sure, and other parts of West Sac as well. That would probably be really important for those folks to know.
That's a great idea. I think when you have a developer building new housing, when they start, putting those up for sale, that they include advertising in some way of via transportation, like that new, how many units, Councilmember Early, is that 600? No, is it,
Which one?
322 units. Oh my goodness, yes. We want them in a via van.
I thought we were up to 400. It's 322 on the Washington.
Yes, the one on Jefferson.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, we just want those new areas to be well aware of via and out of their car into a van.
Okay.
That would be a way to merge those. Okay, and so with that, any other suggestions?
Do they need our direction on to go out to RFP? Because she kept saying if council approves.
No, we just got open public comment. This is a
okay.
word.
Oh, okay.
And then they'll bring it back to us. Right? You'll bring it back to us, right? This is a word.
Yes.
We would like some direction, though, on the idea to issue the RFP, because the other alternative is to go straight to,
No RFP.
yeah, straight to a contract with Nomad.
I'm asking for the RFP so that with the specification of making sure that we have somebody that will partner with us on these certain conversations that we're having, not just turning it over to them completely and them just doing what they want. So I'd like the RFP to include some language to speak to partnership, in addition to like kind of some of the data stuff we talked about, but the football games are the basketball games and the times of those existing to make sure that our kids can get around safely.
So advertise via, say, in the Sutter Health Park?
Oh, no, so
Or
I'm asking
events?
for the RFP with the direct request that we're looking for a partner that will enhance ridership, will increase services on certain dates, like the basketball
I
games
see.
and football
Okay,
games.
yeah, so you're looking for, I don't know how you planned it, but they could figure it out.
I would think so, with some conversations with some folks in the community.
Yeah.
Yes, proposal for me too.
Sure, yes, proposal. And then I'll open it up for public comment, Madam Clerk.
We have no request to speak on this item.
So I do see somebody from VIA.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for all the kind words.
Introduce
and
yourself.
I'm thrilled.
Introduce
Oh, sorry. I am Krista Glatzbach. I'm a VP of Partnerships at VIA, also Nomad. I live here in the Bay Area. I just want to say this, as you all speak of the service and the joy you have had and the positive experiences you've had, that makes me extremely happy. This is, as we've mentioned, our 5th year of service here. It is one of the most successful microtransit services in the world. I think we're talking very much about this room. We run 350 of these globally, from 3-vehicle service in Calexico to hundreds of vehicles in a single service in Berlin. And as far as your cost per ride, your sharing, your overall ratings of the service, this is one of the best in the world. And it's something to be super proud of. And I don't think you necessarily see that every day as you're talking about it here. There's always things to make better. And we are thrilled to partner with the city on hours. I think Stephanie could attest to, any type of adjustments, we make those. And, according to budget, we've got to stay within the budget, but are always happy to move things around. And the model we use helps us be very flexible. I also want to add that the money, funding is always an issue. We have a big policy team. We also have a grants team. So we help our partners apply for funds. We helped Cupertino win $8.5 million from California's TIRCP fund. We helped 2 other big agencies right now who have achieved STEP grants, and they are now out for RFP. We got $3 million for Richmond, just down the road here, the city of Richmond, to expand their service. So electrification is so important to the state of California right now that these grants are available to help electrify services. So West Sacramento is well poised for that, and we'd be thrilled to help secure some of those funds as well. So as you're talking about the things that you'd like this next operator to do, including those services that are broad, I think is also important. To have a very low cost per ride and as low as possible cost as we can for the city, but also include the things that you need in order to continue to make this super successful. Thank you very, very much for your time and the invitation to speak.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Chris.
it.
Close the public comment, bring it back to council. I think we heard that there's an interest for an RFP. Anything else you need from us? Measures are important to maintain. I think what we've heard that you've referenced, Stephanie, are the elements to maintain. I think we covered all the questions.
Okay, great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank
All right, next we will go to our general administration. Part 2, do we have any council assignment reports? Okay.
I do.
Yes,
I
go
do.
ahead.
Okay, so real quick, on November 2nd, the Executive Commission to Address Homelessness met. And I want to give a heads up to our West Sacramento nonprofits who are providing services. HAP 5 funding is going to be coming the beginning of the year. The exact amount of funding is not sure, but hopefully by the end of January they know. So for the nonprofit service providers who are working in those spaces, be prepared for that grant application. At the meeting, I was very clear on going through the processes to make sure that our local service providers were on that list so that they would have the opportunity to access that grant funding. At the meeting, we awarded $552,000 of HHIP funding to Haven House in Woodland. And then on November 6th, Yellow Habitat Conservancy met, and we welcomed our new executive director, Elisa Sabatini. And then, let's see, wanted to just thank the team for the Veterans Day Parade. That was fantastic. And then earlier today, RD 900 met. Would you like me to give a quick update on that?
No. I mean,
do we need to?
RD 900?
It's one of my assignments. No?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
Isn't it?
No.
Isn't it
Okay.
all of ours?
It's all of ours.
Okay, then I'm good.
Yeah, it'll be really short,
Sure.
Mayor. So I attended the November 5th, and it was the 3rd annual Dia de los Muertos. We started this event 3 years ago, and it was a wonderful event. There were about 500 in attendance. They had, free tacos, snow cones, corn. They had crafts for the kids. They had piñatas. There was a wonderful band, and there were dancers out there, children dancers that just did a beautiful job. Mayor, thanks for being one of the sponsors. We had various sponsors, some of our supervisors, Villegas and Sandy, but a lot of other fabulous folks who were out there sponsoring the event. And I'm really hoping that we continue this event. As I said, this is our 3rd annual. It just brings, such an incredible cultural flavor to West Sacramento. And I definitely believe this is going to become a tradition, just like San Pedro. I mean, they've had it like for 100 years, their festival. So we hope this will also continue. And on November 11th, of course, Veterans Day, Brian Steiger did such a great job. This parade gets just bigger and bigger every year. And I was in the parade, one of the, I'm not going to say floats, it was in the back of a pickup truck. But, and Mayor was there also, and then those wonderful council members who were not in the parade were out there cheering us on. I saw Dante out there and Berna, and they were, you know. So just wanted to mention that. It's becoming a really fabulous parade because the school band was out there playing, and then who else was out there? We had horses out there. We had two 100-year-old World War II veterans who were actually in the cars, and that was fantastic to see. And let's see, who else was out there? We had the Girl Scouts.
Elkhorn was out there?
Elkhorn, yeah. There were just so many people out there having such a great time. They did. The kids loved it. I think it's like their second Halloween because they have candy thrown at them and all.
My 3-year-old wore his Spider-Man costume, so it actually was a second Halloween.
Yeah, so it's one of the great events we have here in West Sac. That's it.
Councilmember.
So I have a few. I'm going to start with SACOG. SACOG was actually pretty historic in that it had 4 county regions as well as Sacramento, SAC-RT, SMUD, SMUD's CEO actually, as well as their directors come all to talk about the future, climate change, and climate goals, regionally climate goals. And so it was a very productive discussion about goals. Our light rail extension was brought up as one of the things SAC-RT said that they had gotten dollars for and were continuing to work on. And so that was great to hear that is still continuing to move forward, and again is in SAC-RT's court right now. And so that was a great meeting. YOLO Transportation District was actually this Monday. We specifically talked about the 80 expansion, and even more specific, Caltrans released their environmental impact report, their EIR, that got released at 4:35 p.m. this past Monday. There were 54 days as of that day to be able to provide public comment on that EIR, which is, again, really important, definitely impacts our community here in West Sacramento. Again, in case folks don't remember, this is the tolling lane expansion on 80, going from starting at Davis around and then going through the causeway, I think all the way, I want to say to Harbor. Is what is up here. And so the public comment session will be open, or opportunity will be open until January 5th. So again, 54 days, January 5th, 11:59 p.m. And then Caltrans intends to, within 30 days, respond to all of those public comments with the hope of having a finalized EIR out by mid-February. And this is really important because in order for the dollars that YOLO Transportation District has gotten from the feds, that $87 million, in order for those to actually be used by YTD for the expansion, that report has to be out by mid-February. So it is what's been described to me as a drop dead date for allowing us to use those funds. By us, I mean YTD. So important. November 28th will be one of the public meetings that Caltrans will be hosting here, or holding here in West Sacramento. And so that also is really, really important. There will be 2 public engagement meetings as part of this public comment to the EIR. One of them is in West Sacramento, again, November 28th. The other will be in Davis. I do not have that date off the top of my head. That would be surprising because that means it's going to happen after the EIR public comment. Okay.
All right.
Well, then you better come to West Sacramento on November 28th.
Good.
Yes. I know they also have contacted, the West Sacramento Ledger to put that in. And so, again, all part of making sure that folks know that this is there, and we get as much community engagement as possible. Lastly, just on this, I will note that as a director for YTD, we all advocated, including myself, for additional public engagement on this in our communities. And so YOLO Transportation District staff we'll be doing additional, again, not just the November 28th. Because again, the November 28th one is focused on the EIR, and it's very, very specific. And so that may not be the exact public engagement. There might be additional things that our community is going to want. Okay, last couple of things. Color of Music happened a couple weeks ago. Our mayor was in attendance. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful night. The opening night happened here at our city hall for the second year in a row. And so thank you to staff for continuing to be so welcoming. I will remind folks, Color of Music is a Black orchestra that has musicians from all over the world, not just country, but all over the world. Playing what has historically not been publicly recognized Black composers. And so really culturally rich, beautiful experience. And so thankful to be able to showcase that here in West Sacramento. Lastly, I did attend the Veterans Parade. We got to decorate a float. My daughter did briefly get to throw out candy before she had to run to a soccer game. And so just very appreciative to live in a community that celebrates our veterans and has these parades. I think it's important for us all to come together so that we see that we have more in common than we do differences.
Thank you, Councilmember, and thank you for covering while I was away on a meeting with the U.S. Conference of Mayors last week, which, just a quick update, it is the National Homelessness Convening with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Mayor Bass is the chair of this task force, and so as a participant of the task force, it gave me the opportunity to hear some really good presentations, one from the National Association to End Homelessness, Alliance to End Homelessness. They provided a very good historical perspective, going back to the 60s, on how homelessness had evolved. And currently, I mean, their conclusion is we hear different stories even here in Yolo County as to what contributes to homelessness. Lack of affordable housing is the key factor. And there are, competing opinions about whether it be related to substance use and mental illness, and other factors could be, currently what we're experiencing is the end of the moratorium on eviction prevention. So what we're noticing, I think, and at the federal level, they are recognizing that the eviction moratorium has had a huge impact, as you'll start seeing a climb in homelessness for people who weren't paying their rent, are going to be allowed to be evicted. So that's something I'd like to keep an eye on for West Sacramento. I know that we had our recent pit count that showed we increased homelessness a little bit, and I'd like to see more data. I think I'd like to understand who this population is in West Sacramento. That's kind of like a request I have. We also heard from Dr. Margaret Cushell. She's with UC San Francisco, been off in Homelessness and Housing Initiative, very informative presentation. What I find very interesting in her presentation was the ability to track individuals that are homeless between now and, say, 10 to 15 years out, and what happened in their lives, once they weren't even offered housing. They said, you have 50-50 chance of ever getting housing, but we want to track you. And it's really hard to be able to get any personal data from somebody if you're not going to give them much of anything. And they did agree to be tracked. I think there were like 2 people who said no. So that, I think, is something, I'd like to consider too. Yeah. So maybe tapping that resource and find a way for her to do some research here as well. The other thing we did is tour the Hill de Solis Care First Village. And what's fascinating about the Care First Village is they use their ARPA funds, federal ARPA funds, and other, I think, federal funds to build this village. And this was created through using containers, like the containers that you find in shipping containers. That the material they used. Keep it cool. They were all very, they had air conditioning units. They were very tiny, but people that had been on the streets for years were able to be off the streets and in a beautifully, modern, housing. And there's, just a lot of structure that's provided, and that's what's needed. And I think they're continuing to move along. I was offering what we have as urban farming, around here, which I think we're doing that in one of our motels. But because I think that's a component in hands-on. So other than that, they have a great program that I was able to see. And also connect with, former, Senator Kevin Murray, who is the president and CEO of that location, which is run by the Weingart Center Association. And the other, our mayor of Sacramento, Gerald Steinberg, presented, and a few other mayors on some of the things they've done. But I think the key presentation we received was from Mercedes Marquez. Sorry, not Mercedes, Nira Tandon, Domestic Policy Advisor to President Biden. So she shared with us a couple of new initiatives that at the federal level they're going to release more information on, is the HHS and HUD Accelerator Program. That is a nuance that is very intriguing, that I'd like to be able to see what we can do to tap into that. And some more information will be released. HUD also released a $50 million to address youth and homelessness, new assistance to improve housing placement. And we are, I also saw, the resources and streamlining actions to help Public Housing Authority to, to blend it with, other programs here. So that is through our COC. So those are some of the programs that I heard that they released. And we'll get more information. There's more briefings and things going on at the U.S. Conference of Mayor level. So I'll continue to keep track. And Aaron joined me, so he was out there. Hopefully, he can give us a little update on what happened to your trip to as part of your. Whoops! What? So I just want to say that was I think a very we topped it off. I met Jimmy Kimmel.
You buried the lead.
It was after the strike, so he was back out, and he's an advocate, partnering with Mayor Bass. And I have to say that it does help a lot to have a celebrity in your corner who raises billions of dollars, for any elected official to tap when you need to have some influence on what. So, kudos to Mayor Bass for that accomplishment. And sharing that with us.
Madam Mayor, I may
Yes.
make a mention. You sit on the county 2x2, correct? The city county 2x2?
Yes, I do.
You might enjoy a presentation on the Yolo County Executive Commission to Address Homelessness done by the Health and Human Services Director. It was done in another county. I'm not sure if you've received that presentation.
We did receive the presentation.
Did you? Okay.
Except Supervisor Sandy available then. But maybe we can probably get another. We did receive a presentation.
Okay,
I did ask the questions, how, people became, or what are the reasons why people are ending up, why we saw an increase in homelessness. We housed everybody, but where do these other individuals come from? So I just wanted more background, and I didn't. Or did you? Have I missed something? No? Okay. Well. All right, so that concludes. I think everybody's gotten their presentation. And I just want to say, the color of music was beautiful, just exquisite music. It's just so nice and refreshing and healing, to have that beautiful music. And just to see the audience just melt, after hearing those, that beautiful music. And your, Dia de los Muertos. Oh my goodness, I just got to say that was awesome. It was incredible. So, thank you for doing that and enriching us culturally, both of you, in the ways that you have. I have to say, we are doing some great work here.
Yeah, I had great folks. We had a great chairwoman, Leslie Alberto and Campbell. But we had a great team with so many people. We had Alfred Melbourne, we had Rhonda Hope, we had Rick Rahalva, who's helped all the years, and just so many people, who stepped forward. We had Maria Garcia helping out, also giving a presentation on the history of those, and John Archuleta, who does so much for
he does.
the community, and And I know there's so many people I'm forgetting right now, you know, but
County Supervisor Mary Sandy.
I mentioned
was
her
also a
and the other,
sponsor.
right, and there were just a lot of great organizations. And Michelle, I haven't forgotten you. Michelle Townsend's always out there.
Oh, that's right.
helping us. She is.
Painting faces.
Yes.
So cute.
There were a lot of wonderful. And of course the staff, you know, made sure the park was nice and clean for us and the bathrooms too. I think I had to come out twice.
And one of the things I'd like to comment is sometimes, you know, we don't invite staff to, you know, who are residents or, you know, veterans to participate in the parade. We'd like for you to be a participant. You know, we can have special cars for you to ride in and, you know, join us. I think next year we got to do a little more work to do some outreach for that. And also a shout out to the Westside PD for keeping us all safe. I heard stories. You were very firm and
Thanks,
the
Chief.
safety. So thank you. And one of the other things I did was a police ride along. Wow, I just have to say, I think the police officer saw my eyes wide open and like, wow, this is interesting out here in our community. We have our work cut out for us to build our police department, making sure that, you know, we have sufficient support so that, you know, our officers are safe because of the increased demand for services. So I just want to say that I appreciate everything they do, appreciate it deeply, and I'm grateful for those that are here with us, and just like to give a shout out to what they accomplish every single day and putting their lives at risk for us. K9 Yoda, so adorable, such a trooper out there. Okay, so anyways, that's that. Next is our council appointments. Madam Clerk, can you give us an update on the council appointments that we are seeking?
We have 3 vacancies. One is on the Board of Appeals, one is on the EU, the Environment and Utilities Commission, and the third, one moment. This is the Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Services Commission. We
That's right.
have applications open until December 31st.
That's great. There's a way to partner with the Ledger on that? That would be really helpful.
They've been noticed.
Have they been noticed? Okay, good. And I saw an update about our academy, that we are Citizen Academy as well, if there's a way to notice that.
That's in the works.
That's in the works, great,
It's not
okay.
being
It's not
actively
public
recruited
yet.
yet, so too soon,
Yes, go
but
ahead.
it's coming.
Are youth able to apply for that intergenerational Parks Commission? The open seat? I don't.
I'm sorry,
Youth? Y-O-U-T-H?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, yes.
It's like, no.
If you wanted to apply, Jennifer, you could.
I'm not a resident of the city of West Sacramento. I don't think we have a youth seat on the Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Services Commission.
Used to. Okay, I'm going to turn this thing off.
Council calendar.
Yes, Amanda and the HR team are at a conference this week, so I'll be giving that. So between now and the next meeting, just really the only item of note is the December 1st, the Friday night at 5 o'clock, we have the annual tree lighting with Chamber of Commerce outside here. So make sure that's on your calendars. And then December 6th is our next meeting. We will have a Port Commission meeting for that at 5 o'clock, so just plan accordingly if you're on the Port Commission. And that's the calendar. I can jump right into the manager's report.
Sure, go ahead.
And yeah, I'll be kind and quick about the meeting I attended in LA. That was put on by OPR. Had all the heads of the state agencies. Very impressive lineup. I'm hopeful that more will come out of it, but I think it diverged a little bit to a very much broader topic than what it was billed as, which was housing, infrastructure, and climate change, and meeting the moment there. There were a couple of breakout sessions that we all participated in. But like I said, it was an impressive group to speak with. We'll see what happens from here, and I'll remain optimistic, but it was a very broad-based topic in the forum, so I didn't leave 100% encouraged that it would result in all sorts of things that would help us do infill housing better, but we'll see. So, and I did enjoy the U.S. Conference of Mayors sessions that I attended with the mayor as well. So other than that, have a happy Thanksgiving next week.
Thank you. City Attorney report?
Nothing tonight.
Staff direction from city council members? I do want to congratulate, I think it's Ariana Adame for the receiving the Municipal Management Association of Northern California Annual Conference. She received the Wes McClure Outstanding Assistant Award. This award is designed to recognize outstanding achievement and exemplary commitment in work performed, plus a dedication to the profession. That is huge for one of our employees here to receive that. It's incredible. So I just want to congratulate her and open that up for my council members to also to do the same. Right.
I'll congratulate her on LinkedIn.
That's how I found out.
It's going to be in the newsletter too. If
It
hasn't
is?
been
Okay,
already.
great.
Yeah, we're letting you know.
Okay. Future agenda item request by council?
I have one.
Yes. Did you submit it in writing? Sorry. I didn't
No,
see
I'm
it.
going to do that.
Oh,
No.
there she is. Congratulations.
Congratulations. No, Mayor, I will submit it in writing.
Okay.
Should I say what it's going to be, or should I just wait and submit it?
Mr. City Manager, or Mr. City Attorney, what do you suggest?
Submit it in writing?
Yeah, I mean, you're free to say what it is, but the process, just as a reminder to everyone, is
I will.
an email to me with a summary, and then we put it on the future item line. It would be, in this case, it would be December 6th, and then if there's consensus among the council to place it on a future agenda, it would come back at a later date.
Okay.
But you're free to say
Well,
what it is.
I was going to say, well, in honor of Native American Heritage Month, I'd like to rename Bright Park Miwok Park. I'd like that to be considered.
We'll talk about that. We have a renaming policy specific to park facilities, and we'll just want to check that to make sure if that is a request, we track it the right way. So
Okay.
we can follow up about that.
Yeah, I don't think we have any park in West. Actually, I can't even think of anywhere in the area. Sacramento area.
Patwin.
Where is it? California. I never even go over there.
I've had many a Girl Scout meeting there.
I think Miwok's really important, on this end also.
All right. And I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Early moves.
Sulpicio Hall seconds.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sulpicio Hull?
Aye.
Councilmember Early?
Aye.
Councilmember Acala?
Aye.
Mayor Guerrero?
Aye. All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Where is Patwin Park? Where is that?